as, Vivian pulled her aside and presented her best to this girl, Addie. And I just watched them embrace and love. And then I saw Addie walk over to her parents, and they just sobbed together and just said, Mom, I don't think I've, felt this good in my life ever. I got to apologize. He's like, there I was talking about how much my son needed this experience. He said, but I'm here to tell you that I needed this so bad for me. I had no idea how bad I needed this.
Welcome out to this week's episode of God and Country. We greatly appreciate everybody being with us. We want to, again, emphasize to like, share, and subscribe. There is a pretty significant amount of suppression from YouTube. We didn't mention last week, we're mentioning this week. Anytime we talk anything relatively political about abortion or about Democrats or anything like that, or we're just saying normal stories, there's not a lot of suppression. Those videos kind of take off on us, but we really need your support in getting this shared out there so we can get this thing a little more publicized and get those listening hours up so we can actually support this channel. We have an excellent guest with us this week. This is Dan Ouzounian, and he's got a story of miracles and service about him serving the people down in Mexico, and we greatly appreciate you being on board with us today. How are things going for you?
Things are good. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Good. You've got quite the story about service projects down in Mexico and actually building homes for people. So I'm looking forward to these great stories. But we're kind of going to start off with where you grew up, how you were raised, and how...
Who is Dan?
Who is Dan?
How those morals and values were instilled in you.
All right. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Bountiful, Utah, and came from a pretty mixed family. My mom is Swedish. She came here in the 50s. My father came a few years before her. He's Armenian. He came with a few siblings, and he had the equivalency of about $5 in his pocket and docked in New York. And they worked to find enough passage to get on a Greyhound bus and meet up with some friends they knew in southern Utah.
So they went from New York on a Greyhound to Utah.
Yep, him and his siblings. And so that's how that kind of began. And the miracle, my mother was in a really bad shape when she had my sister next in line to me. She's 8 years older. I came 8 years after. And she was told she'd never have children. She ended up with something that I think today would be called Guillain-Barré, where she had my sister and her limbs started to tingle, and the next thing you know, it worked its way from fingertips through the arms down her torso and to her toes, and she had about 15% of her mobility. And it lasted for some time, and through a series of faith-promoting miracles that are really sacred to our family, she was healed. And was told once again she'd never have children, and then lo and behold, she was probably a little bit surprised when she got pregnant with me. And I was born probably 2 or 3 years after she had that. And so, I was the caboose and gave her a run for her money. They weren't really expecting that to happen, but grew up in Bountiful, and my parents, good people, very God-fearing and loving of gospel principles. My father was almost a zealot, one could say. He was raised in Armenia, and it was a rough circumstance. He was born in Syria, a little stint in Lebanon. There's quite a bit of problem for the Armenians from the Turks even during his life. They had to be careful in some places they lived where they had to maintain a Turkish dialogue,
so
otherwise they'd get
not
taken
to interrupt, but so he was Christian, growing up in Armenia.
Yes.
Spent time in Syria and Lebanon, which was heavily Muslim.
Yep.
So how was that dynamic? What happened there?
Well, being in Armenia, the Turks kind of came in and took over. There was a pretty rough environment with the Turks. And so they ended up in Lebanon to seek some refuge there. And so he was part of his teenage years there. Then they ended up in Antep, Turkey, in a kind of a civil area where a lot of Armenians had settled during all of the crises that happened. And then he was really deep in his faith and actually was a missionary in the Holy Lands. He served a couple of different religious missions in the Holy Lands back when things were a little bit different than they are today for missions. But he ended up here and had a strong faith. He he had seen some things. He'd never denounced his faith, and a lot of his siblings did. They'd all seen the miracles too, and that's a whole different story I don't want to get into. But nonetheless, he instilled in us kids a hard work ethic at an early age. We were doing tough things. We were maybe perceived a little different as I was being raised. There were people that thought he was a little off. You know, we ate differently, we did things differently, and there was just a little bit of a stigma.
Just a cultural difference.
Yeah, just a cultural thing. And so there's some people in our neighborhood, and you know, if I wanted to have a sleepover with one of my friends when I was young, and I remember hearing in the background, like, oh, you know, they're a little different. They're weird. I don't know if I want you over there. And when you're little, you don't think much of that. But nonetheless, I had a really instilled in me a hard work ethic. He worked me to the bone, and I didn't like it. And him and I butt heads, and there were a lot of things that he did that really got under my skin. And we didn't have the greatest relationship. But through all of that, there were some things that he did that have stuck with me. And one of which is he was very charitable and very kind. And we had a couple of acres in Bountiful, and he would plant massive gardens that I had to tend to with him, so that people from Russia and other places that didn't have, he would ensure that they had a place to come to get food and different things of that nature. And he was very successful with his business. He had a large excavation business. I don't know if you Val Staker that does road construction. Him and Val were close friends. Oh. My dad owned half the property that they excavated.
You're talking like Staker Parsons, right?
Yeah, Staker Parsons,
wow,
yeah.
That's
I know
a
Val.
big outfit.
Yeah, so he worked with them. He owned a lot of property, and my dad had the equivalency of a 6th grade education. But the Armenians are known for their tenacity, and he was really smart. But he was very charitable, and there was one specific instance where it kind of left a mark on me. I was, I think, maybe 15 at the time, and some friends and I were going to head somewhere, and he said, look, we're heading out, Mom and I need you to be around for this woman to come pick up these bushels of goods. And I remember telling him, Dad, I don't want to do that. Like, I've got to go. I've got plans. And what he said went. So I was angry and really bitter and just so upset. I'm like, why can't these people just come and pick their own goods? They're so lazy. This is the worst. Anyway, she ended up showing up, and with me being really disgruntled, waiting, and missed my friends, and there's no cell phones. I wasn't going to be able to catch up. This woman showed up in a car that was pretty run down. She had a few kids in there, and I didn't think much of it, but I just ran to the garage and grabbed the things, was storming out with them, just mad at her. And then I noticed she had a kind of a limp in the leg, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And she opened her trunk, and I started putting things in. And I saw her kids where you could tell that they had not had a whole lot, and they were kind of dirty, and the one little kid with a diaper that needed changing. And here I am passing judgment on these people. And got done putting everything in, and she walked over to me, and she embraced me and just said, with just 2 small words, which was thank you. And something happened to me. I was just basking in the Spirit of God. And I think for the first time, that teenage young man in me realized what mattered and realized what my dad was trying to teach me, even though I hated him. He was really hard on all of us kids. And there's a lot of things that, leave scars behind. But that one instance really instilled upon me how valuable it is to love someone and the value in loving your neighbor. And that stuck with me. And so I just have always held on to that, despite all that frustration and anger and some of the scarring and trauma, I think, of my youth. He wasn't bad. He didn't physically abuse, but there was just a lot of anger and frustration. He was raised a certain way, and he just persisted. We kind of made amends before he passed, but that's where it began for me, of what it felt like to do good for others.
I find it very interesting. We talk a lot about this podcast about people just being just crazily entitled. Mm-hmm. Entitlement problem amongst the new teenagers, mm-hmm. Amongst the youth, even amongst the illegal immigrants who are coming across. There's a lot of entitlement. But when you get out of that shell and you actually stop thinking about yourself and you stop having that kind of selfish mentality, you start serving everybody else, all of a sudden that entitlement mentality dissipates. That selfish thinking about me, just it's gone. And all of a sudden there's a whole new respect for your fellow man, a whole new respect for those who are around you, for those who have less than you. And I think that happens a lot where those of us who are conservative, those of us who are Christian, we get this thrown in our face that you're anti-immigrant, you're anti-Christian, you're anti all these things, and one is the exact opposite. What we believe it is service, not being entitled, and giving of yourself wholly, because that was what God would expect of us. Right. But at the same time, trying to have the same standards and holding people to the same type of standards and saying, look, I'm going to help you, but I need you to also help yourself, and
Right.
just trying to build people up and not keep them down. When you get, and I hate to get political on this particular subject, but when you get people that are stuck in the public assistance world or in that other world, and they
It's a detriment to them.
it kills
It's
their
crippling.
ability.
It doesn't
to
give them the
grow.
opportunities to feel and grow from those experiences. So it really is disabling to them. I know I was listening to something on PragerU, a lady from South Africa, who was talking about how these humanitarian services debilitate and keep their country poor. People can't do businesses. The shoemaker can't sell shoes if we're constantly sending the shoes over to them, and they're like, there's a line between
Right.
helping people who are in an emergency and those who are just trying to work their way out of poverty.
For sure.
Yeah, and you can't debilitate people, but at the same time, you got to help and love them and serve them. And
Sure.
that awakening as a teenager is pretty paramount, because that just kind of frames the rest of your life.
It does. It really does. I think it leaves a lasting mark. And, I think as parents, it's so critical that we take opportunities to provide some discomfort for our children and to give them opportunities. I had a gentleman in business once. I admired him, a Southern Baptist man in North Carolina, and he invited us out to go to church with him in his big old 2,000 people congregation. And so we came, and we'd always talk religion, and he had us stay at his home. And my business partner and I were there and went to the church and came back to his home, and I was so impressed with his kids and how well-behaved and just cordial and all the things you hope for your children. And I was about 10 years behind him with mine, and I'm feeling like a loser. Like my kids are out of control, they're wild, and I don't even know what I'm doing. And I was traveling, and I'm just trying to balance and figure it out. But he taught me something that was really poignant. He said, look, how much time did you spend to come to prepare for this sales call with us? I'm like, yeah, we've spent some time. No, how many hours? I don't know, maybe 50, 100. He's like, do you have a plan B? You know your competition here, right? Yeah, we do. We know who they are. And he's like, do you have a plan C? I'm like, really haven't thought much of that, but we have a couple different plan Bs for the different competitors. And then he looked at me and he says, well, let me ask you about your kids. You got a plan A for your kids? You got a plan A and a B for each one of them as a unique individual? How much time are you putting into them? And it just hit me of how critical it is to do as you state, to give them those skills that aren't easy to give, but it's the one thing that you can truly give. It's the thing that gives them the ability to stand on their own 2 feet, and to recognize where real value and real joy comes from, which is not in an inward mindset, which we're seeing more and more of today, as you state, and this entitled mindset that's terrible, and it's causing devastation everywhere. So I'm on board with exactly what you're talking about.
And it's not just the entitlement, though. It's people are destroying the family,
Right.
Absolutely destroying it. And with all this woke ideology, all this really far left ideology, the LGBTQ community is really destroying families. And nothing against that community, because I have nothing against it, but there's a lot that's just attacking the family and destroying it. Like you, I grew up in a very, very poor household. We did not have any money growing up. And my father was really, really tough on us, just ultra tough on us. Mm-hmm. We hated every minute of it, not the best relationships. We moved into a new house down in South Provo, and it was just a dirt yard and weeds as tall as we were.
Yep.
And they'd give us a 10-foot section every day that we had to go out there and physically hand pull. And I hated every minute of it, because it was just the hardest clay ground. You had to get it wet just to even get anything done.
I hear you. Been there.
And it was years of that. But even after the weeds were done, the grass was down, and just years and years and years of solid, just hard work. But the one thing I noticed, though, is anytime we went on a scouting trip, my brothers and I, we were the only ones that worked.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a trail that had to be made or something like that, we were the ones that were the hardest workers. We were the ones that got the whole project done. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody else was already conking out halfway through it. And the leaders really respected us for it, and we got leadership positions because of that, just because we just knew how to work.
Right.
And as much as we hated the work at home, you can't replace that work ethic. Even when I got older and started building my businesses, that work ethic kicked in. All my brothers and sisters, you can tell that work ethic just kind of kicks in, and you can create a great life for yourself. And I did the same thing with my kids, and I wasn't as harsh as I was, but I forced them to work. I mean, we had enough money to pay people come in and do yard work, and I wasn't having any of it. I made the kids get out there and do it.
Yep.
And then my kids, now that they're older, are also looking back because they hated every minute of it and respecting the work ethic, because they're all being very, very successful right now. And I think that's wholly missing now, is that parent-child relationship where they respect the parent as a parent, not just a fun person to be around, and they instill respect for adults. They instill respect for the community, for laws, and just instill work ethic. And
100%.
if we had that, society would be completely different right now.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. Same thing with my kids. My oldest is 28, my youngest 21, and they're all very independent. My two boys are very successful. They're in homes, which is a hard thing these days. But they work hard, and they're known for that. And when I've met some of their superiors and bosses or people, they always look to me and just say, you've done a great job with your kids. And I mean, I've left some scars too.
There's the payoff.
There's been some scars too that I'm sure I've left behind. Just some of the things you learn from your father that you hope you never do, but you end up doing it. It's just part of life.
Yeah, but we're human.
We are.
None of us are perfect.
No.
And kids got to figure that out too. So I'm just as human as you are.
Right, right. Well, my daughter, she's a nurse. She married well, and my youngest is thriving. And I think just having them be independent and contributors, it just gives my wife and my wife and I a lot of comfort and peace. And I'll never forget dropping my daughter off at school. She was actually done with school, but dropped her off in Provo to live with some friends. And we drove home with my truck, and everything was empty. And I just remember saying, like, wow, did we just raise a family? Is it done? And it, of course, is never over, but it was just a good feeling to know that they're in a good place. And it was a tearful moment, and it's one of those milestones where you're just like, it just felt good. And I think one of the most proud things that I think as a father I am of my children is that they're hard workers and they're very respectful of others. And we kind of demanded that in their youth. And I think that's called parenting. And becoming the best friend is never serving. And I find the kids that have that, the parents are a doormat. And then they turn into these entitled individuals that don't even know quite how to handle what the life is going to throw them. So it's a huge disservice to not provide a little discomfort now for you to avoid massive discomfort later. And, I say all the time that, laying the hammer when they're younger is a lot cheaper than rehab later. And, I say that a little tongue in cheek, and I want to be sensitive to those that have those situations despite doing a good job. But I think there's some important lessons to learn, is just instilling that labor and that work ethic up front, because you can not teach that as easily as a skill. It's something they have to learn from their youth and when they're young. And that's how I was taught. Didn't love it, but as you come out on top, and people recognize you're a little different. And to me, it was just normal. You just get the job done, and you do it well. Take pride in what you do. And I'm 10 years old, welding quarter-inch sheets still in the bottom of dump trucks, and driving a loader when I'm 14 that could go through a house if I'm not careful. But my dad just get in there and do it. You can do this. So at a young age, I was taught to do a lot of things that has really trickled into what I do now and has served me well. And while I hated it when I was young, I see the wisdom in it now. My dad, he did the best he knew how. And there were some things he didn't do right, and he was raised really hard himself. But when the things that matter most, and the things that he gave me, I look back with fondness.
It's interesting that they say, so important for a father figure to be in the home, and even the worst father is better than no father in the home.
I agree.
And the Armenian culture's got to be way different than the United States culture. So him coming over from Armenia and then trying to raise kids. Yeah. And then you're around other kids that have more of an American culture growing up, and you're seeing a difference between how your father's being raising and how others. And you're not necessarily understanding his culture because you weren't there in Armenia to understand that.
So true. And my mother was raised by a single mom in Sweden, and that was rough post-World War II. And so she didn't have a father growing up. And so I think that, caused for some dynamics of her being a little more, subservient. And I think that generation was more such. But my father was the provider, and she was the nurturer and damage control. And I think they did a good job. And my mom's still alive. She's suffering some dementia now, and she still remembers us and so forth, but she's at the tail end. But I look back and just really am appreciative of how I was raised, even though there were some hardships along the way and some scars. But I wouldn't be who I am without that. And I think
Well,
the discomfort,
that
you know,
builds you, that work ethic, that commitment to service builds into what you've created today. And I know the audience is really excited about hearing about what you've created, because they're like, what is it? What did he create? And we're going to get into that. So you got into literally going down to Mexico and building homes for those who are extremely disadvantaged. And
Right.
you're just down there building a home and just giving these homes. So there's some great images we're going to be showing, some great reveals we're going to be showing here. But first, how did that start? Start at square one. What initiated the idea in the first place? How did the idea even start?
all right.
And then how did you develop that into? Because you don't just arrive and just start doing stuff. You have to
No.
develop that, put plans together, organize stuff, travel arrangements. I mean, everything's got to come together.
Right.
So kind of tell us how that all got going.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. I was working a job traveling as a consultant, and it was becoming a little much. And we had our second boy, and my wife said, I just can't do this anymore and having you gone. So I ended up with a new job that was more local. It wasn't quite as fulfilling, but it was able to serve me in the sense of being able to be a present father, which was really important to me because my dad was not really involved with much of my life. And I got to a place about 40 years old. I'm 55 now, so it's been about 15 years, where I was kind of down, and life was great on paper. You know, beautiful wife, healthy, good relationship. My kids were great, doing well, nice home, great job, making great money. But I was miserable. I just needed something. Something was really missing. And I was aspiring. You're young in your career, and you're trying to be something. And I'd climbed the ladder pretty far and was really successful. But just that something was missing inside of me. And there was a friend of mine that I was working with that was doing little small things in Mexico. He would take little youth groups from his church and go down and, dig a septic tank for someone, or fix a piece of cement, or put a roof on a house, or make a little bathroom. Just as an experience that he had when he was growing up in San Diego. There were some youth leaders that would take them down across the border. And so he was doing that, and I knew, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And he reached out to me, and I was having a pretty bad week, and said, hey, I was asked by some friends to go down and do this big project for team building in Mexico. It was a group of executive leadership of VIVINT, back in the day with the original owners of the VIVINT Corporation. And just said, hey, I know you know a little more than me. They'd like to do some type of a big thing. I'm thinking maybe a home, but I'm not quite there in my skills, and I know you know a little bit more. And my initial reaction was like, ugh, I'd rather just wallow in my self-pity in the corner, I like where I am, and it's just stupid.
I know how to do that. It's comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to stay back here, and I don't know. I was sort of intrigued, but I just didn't really want to. My original thought was no, and he said, just chew on it, and we'll talk in a few days. And he calls back, and I was gonna say no, and something came over me, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So over the next few months, we prepped and planned and got our trailer together with all the stuff. We had to drag tools and everything down there. We didn't have any infrastructure.
So you're driving down there.
Oh, yeah. We drove down there. We had a truck and a trailer with tools. We bought all the sleeping equipment for these young executives that were part of their leadership squad. They were having a lot of, squabbling amongst all these guys that are super uber competitive, and he wanted to bring them closer together, the leader. Anyway, it was amazing. We got down there, and it was incredible. So after
Is that
putting
easy to
together-
do? Like, do they just let you come in with all these supplies and things? They don't question or
No,
what?
getting into the country is quite easy. But yeah, I'll go into that. But anyway, we got all our stuff together. We met all these men in Lower San Diego. They thought they were just coming down to do NASCAR or something. They go off on these lavish trips as these executives do. But this man that was over them, one of the VPs, sprung it on them. Hey, we're going to go down and do some service in Mexico. Bring your gloves. And we had all their sleeping things. We stayed in a disabled children's clinic with brown water and spiders, and electricity worked half the time. But we found ourselves in the streets of Tijuana. It was my first experience. And, man, it was an eye-opener for me, and just got me out of my head. And over that next few days together working with them, it changed my life. I had no idea that this woman, Maria, that had absolutely nothing in the ways of the world that we see and the things that matter to us, she had none of that. But man, did she have something. She was rich in spirit. She'd been through the ringer. She had little kids living with her that were from a daughter and husband that had been killed in an accident. She lived in the middle of nowhere, mud floors. It was really bad. We showed up. It had been raining a ton, and I was so just having pity on her. Oh, I'm so sorry, Maria. You have this mud, and oh my gosh, all your things are wet, and your bed is soaking wet. And she had the best attitude. She's like, oh, it's okay, está bien. And we're going to have a waterbed for a while. It'll be fine. And they'd put tarps over it and just sleep on these wet things. She had the most positive attitude, and she changed me. You know, here we go into that country thinking we're going to put up walls for her and give her a structure. But man, did she tear our walls down so that we could build up to the kind of men we needed to be, and to be reminded of who our allegiance should be to first, and that is to God. She was such an amazing woman and is an inspiration. I'll never forget her saying to me that, you know, at one point she's like, Daniel, you know, don't, and it was through translation, I didn't know Spanish. She's like, don't worry about me. I'm happy. I have my family, and I have my God, and we have a meal each day. I don't need anything more than that. As a matter of fact, I know how you guys live. I watch. I see TV. Sometimes I feel bad for you guys. You have too many things that worry you. And I see you fight in the way you do in your country. Don't worry about me. I have what I need. And oh my gosh, you can imagine. I'm just like, what the heck? She's so right. I remember going, you know, towards the middle of the project, going off to find a door. We were having a hard time finding products. We were so out of our element. We had no business in going down and doing any of this. And we had so many gaps in the skills and the need that we had. But I'm telling you, man, God filled those gaps. And he brought the miracle of making us better and bigger than we could ever be on our own or collectively as a group. And I walked away from that experience just feeling the power that comes from faith in something grander, and really recognizing and understand the thing that really can drive us home to our real home. And it changed me. And from that point forward, I was no turning back. And these men we took down, they were just, you know, full of themselves, young multimillionaire, mid-20s. A lot of them had forgotten their roots and origin of faith. And we watched people we saw them become malleable.
So they were having the same experience.
They were, and we all just walked away from that, just what just happened. We had been on a journey with God. We were on his errand, and he was with us, and we all knew it. I mean, they were emptying their suitcases and dumping cash on the tables, and the woman that we work with down there, her name is Myrna, she's like, oh, we can't give her all this. She won't even know what to do with this. And so she took the money. It was several $1,000s. And over time helped this woman establish a little storefront in front of her home. And now she sustains herself. And she was taught to fish and gained confidence, you know, had a spring in her step, groomed herself a little different. And now she's a prominent member of that little area where she lives. And she works with the orphanages. And,
You've been
and
back
helps
to
and serves.
visit her?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't visit everyone we serve, but there are some we do. And it's been a while since I've seen Maria, but yeah, she's a pretty special lady. And so that's where the beginnings were.
So what was it like for you to watch the mindset change of those executives? Because, I mean, your mind was changing at the time, but
Sure.
they're probably coming in from even a longer stretch than you were even coming from a position that was even farther back. What was that like watching that change?
Well, I just think that all of us, we have friends, we have family, we have business associates that we work together with and we get closer to. And we understand they go through hardships, and we kind of see the things they go through and the patterns that sometimes lead to good or to bad. And we could kind of see that. These guys were younger. I was 15, 18 years older than them. And just recognizing myself in them when I was that age to some degree. And just really seeing kind of a flashback of my own life, and then being able to have those little side conversations, and with that malleability and that ability for them to kind of tap back into those roots of where they felt good. With no money, if you will. They're just, you know, poor college students. And some of the conversations that ensued were really powerful, to where, you know, just soul to soul, nothing else matters. The noise of life was gone. You're just down here focused 100% on doing something kind for someone else. You know, it brings out the best of you. And some of these guys that were a little more arrogant, full of themselves, by the end of the week, they were the ones that were the most tearful, the most humble, and the most appreciative. And the hugs that everyone gave one another were heartfelt, and they were pure. it was amazing.
Because they're coming from a place of wealth. I mean, their minds are reflecting back on home and what they have at home. They're thinking about the cars they have in the garage, the nice couches, the furniture they have.
And they're thinking about what they think their trials are, what
Yes.
was hard in life
What's
suddenly
tough.
doesn't seem so hard.
And then they look at circumstances down there.
Sure.
Mud floors, hardly walls that you can call walls, and they're just the reality check that all of a sudden just hits them, and they just all of a sudden realize their place in the world and
Right.
what life is really about. And it's not about the money, it's about people.
Yeah.
That reality check hits home a lot. And I'm glad it did hit home with them, because some people can go through a situation like that and still not have it hit. They just,
Right. Well,
I
that's
don't
one
care
thing.
about this. I'm
Yeah.
oblivious to it. I don't want to ever come back. But those that are a little bit more humble, they let those things change them.
Well, that's been the interesting part of these trips for 15 years is the outcomes are 100% consistent. You know, in the scripture, God is the same today, yesterday, forever. Always comes to mind when I have these trips, because it's the outcomes that are consistent when you put in those things that God would have us do, and namely love him and love his children, to love our neighbor. It elicits these outcomes, and I've been able to relive it over and over again, and it just instills more and more faith to the point where I just know that he's going to show up. I used to be stressed when I go down. It doesn't matter what happens. I have full peace because I know he's going to be there. He always is. And I've got some stories I'm hopefully going to be able to share, but I had some pictures I think I brought here of Maria, her household. I don't know if we want to look at those, but they built a little outhouse for us, and she was so proud of these two pieces of wood that she sat down with a little gap between the hole, and it was smooth formica that she had found. And she was so proud of this toilet and wanted to present her best for us. And everyone was like, ooh. But by the end of that week, man, we went in there and used that toilet proudly. Yeah, that's the toilet. Yeah, she was very proud of that thing, and her little meager partial rolls of toilet paper. We went and bought a case and gave her. Yeah, that's the toilet that they made for us. And I mean,
She specifically made this outhouse for you guys to use while you were there.
Yeah, and she dug a hole under that was not quite big enough, so we had to kind of work with that. But if you go back, I don't know if you have some photos of her house when we first went there. It was a pretty impactful
We'll get
thing.
into all that here in a few seconds here, but let's get into. You go from this service project this other gentleman started.
Yeah.
And you take these executives down. How did that mold from that
To where we are.
to you doing it?
Yeah.
And you finding your first project?
Sure. So my buddy Brad and I were doing this for several years. It exploded. So these executives we took down there, by nature of how VIVINT Solar, now they're a security company. They have summer sales, young men that go out and sell and knock doors, and they're all over the world. There's Canadians, there's, different places they serve all over the communities of that nature. But anyway, after those first 28 executives were there, they're like, oh my gosh, we got to bring our teams. And then those teams, mid-managers, oh my gosh, we got to bring our teams. And over the next few years, we probably took down about 500 of their employees. That first year was so impactful to me that I couldn't get enough of it. I was addicted. My buddy and we just felt so strongly to continue. And I think we went down and did 8 projects that first year. I took every day of vacation off, time without pay. I didn't even care, fire me. I'll get another job. Like, I needed it. I was thirsty
About how
for it.
long were you spending on each project? How much time?
Depending on the project, but it was usually a week. You'd go in and...
Well, describe these projects. 'Cause these weren't full homes. They were just individual projects. Right?
No, it started out as a full home. And Brad did the little things, and then he asked if I would come. We built this full house. We were about 70% complete. We got maybe 10% of the sheetrock in, but it was dried in, had a roof on it, exterior was painted, doors on, windows, and so forth, but it was tricky. But we would leave everything there, and then she had neighbors and friends and others and family would come, and they finished it off and made it their own. And since then and where we are now, it's kind of crazy. You learn. You find ways to synchronize efforts, because day one, if there's no walls up, what do you put people on? What do you do? Can't do electrical, can't do this, can't do that. So we found a way to build furniture, stage by having all this siding painted before it even goes on, So day one is kind of chaotic, and you probably heard in business the storming, norming, performing, and that's exactly the best way to describe these. Day one is just chaos, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, are we on track? Are we going to pull this off? And everyone's got to exercise a little bit of faith that day one and plant that little seed. Is it going to grow? And by the end, there's a little bit more of a perfect knowledge, if you will, that we can pull this off. And they walk away, and you just see light on. And it's like, wow. But you're right. It started out just more small things, and so we evolved. And maybe 60% of the house would get done, 70, maybe 80, and then we got to the point where we could finish an entire home, get all the sheetrock in, plumbing terminated and connected, and so forth, and lights blazing. And it was, of course, a little different depending upon the geographic and how far did we have to travel, and if the supplies were delivered properly. Did the construction yard do what they say they were going to do? Courting different places to get stuff delivered on time. Their idea of on time is sometime between now and never.
Were you pulling these materials in from suppliers in Mexico, or are you bringing it all down from the United States?
No, suppliers in Mexico for the large items, all the lumber, insulation, roofing materials, things of that nature. But specialty goods that are tougher to find, like vinyl windows, dual pane, any kind of specialty concrete goods, pre-hung doors. I mean, I can build a door, but pretty hard to teach someone on day one how to build a door and make it, the jamb properly shut and so forth. So pre-hung doors, windows, cement goods, all kinds of media, all the angled nails for nail guns, things that it's difficult to find. So yeah, we kind of do a hybrid. I probably spend, of my materials budget, maybe 20% of it in Lower San Diego. I have regional management of Home Depot down there that hook me up and take care of me and pull all my orders and help us out. And we take it across, and I have a way I do that without being too disruptive with the groups. I do it a little bit ahead of time the night prior. I don't sleep a lot on these trips. But I go deal with all the tariffing, and in the beginning, we got tariffed on our tools to help their people. It was irritating. Wondering. Yeah, it was difficult. But now we have a building there that sleeps 60. I've got another warehouse where I keep products. I got vehicles. Every time I'm down there, I'm like, how did this happen?
And you were also affecting more than just the families that you were serving, because you're stimulating the economy a little bit by doing those. And then the neighbors coming in to help finish is bringing in a sense of community.
Where our building is, they were a little apprehensive at first of these gringos coming in, and what are you doing? And they kind of bothered. But we've served every one of them. We've fixed their homes, we've poured carports, we've painted, we've repaired things and eradicated mold and dried in their roofs. And they love us. And we bring them out. We have dinner together, and we're out in the streets and having a good time. We have caretakers down there that were in our building, a portion of it living, and now there's a place where they live across the street. But that building was part of the original charity my buddy and I were working together doing. And then it was about 2019 when I split, so we could kind of divide and conquer and do more good. So we utilize that building for sleeping. I have a place where I store all my tools and materials. So that's kind of how that functions now, but it's taken some time to get there, and the homes have kind of been my core competency. My buddy's interested in doing things such as building a women's clinic and some other things that he's working toward and trying to get some endowments to make that work.
You guys split off, so he's doing his thing with his own projects, and so you are now going to do you're fully on your own. You're going to do your first project. So what was that first project?
Well, that first project where I was alone, we were still together, and it was 2014, and we put together a home for Lupita, and it was crazy. The people that helped me with the concrete, it was from corner to corner. It dropped about 6 inches, and it wasn't level. It was aggregate, and just all kinds of tricky things that we had to figure out, and having people to be able to help stage for us. But my real first project as Building Hearts Foundation was in 2019. And it was really enabling for us my wife and I, kind of create something that we could have a legacy of our own, and kind of focus on some of the things that were important to us and how we run things. We're similar, Brad and I, in how we do things, but I run things a little different, of course, and just by nature of who I am and what my vision is.
So one of your first projects that you did on your own was back in 2019. We're going to kind of go through that one here. So kind of walk us through this project. We're going to pull this up on screen here.
Yes, this project is Mirna Osuna is her last name. Her and her husband and 3 boys were living in this place that they were kind of forced into because of some bad circumstances elsewhere. It was her child household that she lived in. You can see the roof line is layers and layers of tarps that they find, political banners, you name it, anything they can use to keep water out. But it was not doing a great job. It was filled with black mold. As you can see, the windows were broken out. She's got a little swinging door there for the window when it gets windy. But yeah, we showed up and saw this. My daughter, you can see in the background there, she was with me. I take my kids down to scout because it's a pretty special thing. We're pretty prayerful about it, and we'll go visit 8, 10 families, and then we just feel right when we're at the right place. And just every time, the Spirit just whispers, like, here's where you got to be. And I've just learned these projects are more about people than actual homes. So there we are looking at her place, and you can see from a different angle here. Just to the left of it, there you can see a vinyl window, just kind of there adjacent behind that tree. And a different charitable organization built that room. It was like a 10 by 11 structure that they could go into when it rained and kind of stay dry. And they have a kitchen in there. And we decided we wanted to keep that because it had a lot of meaning to them. And it was a lot harder to build off of it. But we did, and we'll see some finished product. But it was a really powerful moment to meet them.
This home here is, that is not necessarily what we would call a dwelling here in the United States,
No.
but fairly common down there. I served down a mission down in northern Chile, like I was telling you before we did the podcast, and I saw a lot of this.
Yeah.
And you get the capital cities, and they wouldn't be any different from our modern cities here.
Sure.
But some of these outlying towns, this is what you walk into, and it's whatever boards and cinder block and tin that they can find that they literally put stuff together in, and it's dirt floors.
Yeah.
When you get out to those poor communities, so that's what you're walking into. So how did you find these communities and decide exactly where you were going to go?
Okay. Well, we have a woman down there by the name of also Mirna. Her name's Mirna Mora, and she is affluent. She's an attorney. She's really good with contract law. She's very good with real estate, which has been instrumental in ensuring that people aren't squatting on property and they say they own it and they don't, and then owners quickly find out that someone's there with a nice new home and they come. We had that problem once. But anyway, we go down and she knows the community well, pastors, parishes, priests. She's also involved with the church I belong to, but she is just instrumental. She'll find maybe, like I say, 8, 10 dozen families. We'll go down usually in January and scout out the trips we're going to do for the year so that we can prepare and kind of know what we're up against.
And so these guys own the land, so you're not worried about the land or anything else like that.
This was generational property. The mother grew up there. Like, that structure is ridiculously old. If you go in, you can see different levels of concrete and just pieced together as the family grows.
So once you make these improvements on these properties, does government come in and tax them or anything on these improvements?
Yeah, there is property tax, and a lot of these places, probably like in Chile as well, they just leave rebar hanging out the top. It's unfinished and therefore not taxable. And so whenever we build structures, they end up having something like that to try to evade. But it's just such a mess down there, and for that to catch up to them is pretty rare. I have yet to find anyone that's had some complaint of having their taxes rise.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been good.
So going back over here, so you find this structure.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like on the inside. Kind of describe what you're walking into.
Well, you walk in and, first off, the smell. When you get all that kind of moisture up inside of everywhere, you can just smell the mold. It's not healthy. A lot of the people down there have health issues and a lot of respiratory coughing and asthma, most of the kids. And it's such a pleasure to go back after you've helped them, and that just dissipates. But yeah, their bathroom, if you look at that, it's pretty meager. They don't even have a tank. You just have a bucket that you pour water to flush it. It actually did drain down the hillside, which we rectified and tied into sewer 150 yards away when we actually built their structure. But yeah, that bathroom was really terrible. Here's where they stand to shower. You can see some of the mold there. But they just use a bowl of water out of that bucket and dump over their body, and that's how it is. It's pretty bad. So this is the group of young men we took down there, and these kids that are impressionable, and they were all excited. We're going to Mexico. It's going to be great. But then, they sober up in a hurry when they see a suspended platform. We had to do that because there was no great way for water to run, so we just let it go under the house. Sometimes that's your only option, and so that's what we did there. And we had someone hired ahead of time to do that for us. But, we go down and visit, and these groups I take down, we visit the family.
So did you guys build the platform?
I had it done before we got there. Yeah.
So you hired local people to do it?
Yes. People we can trust, we'll hire and have them get our structure or substructure ready. Especially
concrete work, because you got some concrete pillars there.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a little tricky. We have taken groups down and started with the pillars and created the flooring, but then once again, it's hard to keep everyone busy on day one. So here you can see we're, just standard construction, stick built, 16 on center with T111 siding, which is kind of what you would see around here for a shed. And it works great. We'll put insulation in the ceiling, just not the walls, because you use, 85% of your heat loss or heat entry is from the top. We used to do the walls too. We just kind of learned that was kind of a waste and we could put the money elsewhere. But yeah, I think that was day one. But yeah, there's a finished product pic there. You can see the mom and dad and her children are amongst the young men on the rooftop, just loving on them. And one of the most impressive things to me about these things is when you go back and ask these people you've served, like, hey, what was your favorite part about this project? Like, what was the favorite thing you had? And I have yet to find a single one of them say anything about the structure. Every time it's like, oh, I was so grateful to see how much love was expressed to my children. Or I loved the feelings I felt when everyone was here and how much love was present and just the feelings. And it was always about the relationships that they had forged. And they're all tied in, whether they're in a shack or not. They're on social media and Facebook typically. And the people we serve together with connect with them, and there's friendships that persist. And then if you press a little further, then they're like, oh my gosh, it was so great when I woke up in the night in a panic when it was raining, thinking I had to go get all the cans and tarps to put over my kids on their beds. And then I realized that it was dry. And I was able to turn over and go back to sleep. That's some big payback. All the stresses and worries of putting these projects together in the beginning, that was overwhelming for me because I'm not a contractor. I'm a tech guy. I mean, seriously, I've swung a hammer a little and put a few things in my basement, but I keep telling myself I have no business in doing this, other than I've really felt inspired that I need to. But yeah, it's just a really cool thing to see what they value. And it's not the structure. It's not the things. It's the people. That's when I learned that these projects have nothing to do with homes, and it's all about building people, not building homes. And the building home is a nice springboard for the miracles, for God to have his way with us and to play chess. And I always tell people, hey, take some time, anytime throughout this project, step back, look down upon the project, look at the people working, and you're going to see God. You're going to see his arms. You're going to see him working. And even I try to do that from time to time. I'm busy. I get yelled at constantly for help because I'm teaching people on the fly. But that's, I think, the coolest part about these things is the relationships that are forged, that are persisting forever and just last.
And I can't imagine the self-esteem that gets in on those kids. Because you're dealing not with just the parents. The parents are obviously grateful. Mm-hmm. But it's a whole new world for a child to come into something that is actually decent, right?
Yes.
And the self-esteem that builds within them, so now they can go forward and they can try harder at school, they can try harder to learn, and all of a sudden you've now affected several generations just by providing a home, like you said, and it wasn't really about the building, but the self-esteem that provides to a child to give them just a little bit extra oomph in life, where I'm willing to put a little more effort into this. I feel comfortable putting a little more effort into my own life, and they can pull themselves up and out of this type of poverty levels just by just that little effort, that little motivation. Yeah. Someone cared enough to help me out with this. 4
days of kindness and giving, it causes for a trajectory of change for generations. This specific project, Mira and Osuna's, her and her husband were just not, it's hard to have confidence when you live in the thing they were in, and to feel like you can aspire to more and go ahead in your life. But the springboard of that was really powerful for her, and we keep in contact with her. And she was very inspired by the Myrna that we work with. It's an attorney and just got enough strength and some help to figure out some grants and things, and she ended up in school. And about 5 years later, she had the equivalency of a bachelor's degree and went on to law school. Yeah. So that generation of poverty that was 8 generations long and talking with her has been broken. And now
just
her kids,
providing a little house
4 days.
Broke generations of poverty, which is again just that little bit of confidence, that little bit of self-assurance, just means the world to them.
It certainly does, and I think those are the things that keep me going back. It's tough. I'm a busy guy right now and have a lot on my platter, and I'm just overwhelmed at times, but there's just some things I can't let go. And this is one of them. It's like oxygen for me. and it's got to be there as part of my life. It's what keeps me going. It's what got me out of a rut when I was 40, and I know it's what's keeping me out of my ruts. And
So talk us through what this building is. What went on here?
okay, so my buddy Brad and I, this is kind of in the beginnings. We had been working together for a couple of years. We had a group of, I think it was 58 guys from VIVINT that came down after our several first trips we had with them, and they helped us build a foundation building. So this is the first version of Chispa, which is Spark. The original charity was Spark of Hope. But Chispa is near and dear. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into that building. As a matter of fact, right across the street was the land that the realtor sold us, signed papers, everything. And before we were going to build, he's like, "Oh, lo siento, it's not for sale." He made an error. Like, what the heck? We signed the documents. What do you tell me it's not for sale? So we ended up buying the property across the way, which was the local dump, and we had to improve it. And the concrete pour for that, before we started building it, we did it in 4 sections so they could work it. And section 2 and 4 were poured and were drying starting about 9:30 the night before we actually started working on it. And how we got that building together was unbelievable. We had a call in days in advance about floor joists. Simple thing to get here. Well, in Mexico, they don't use those. And we knew a construction yard that we saw a few old ones. And Mirna, she's Latina. And these floor joists were, in her mind, available. And we went and looked. And this was before we had our men coming in 3 days to build this place. And we showed up to the place, and it was rotted. They were all different heights. It's like, this isn't going to work. Oh, no, está bien. Like, trying to tell us it's going to be fine. I'm like, no, está bien. It's not going to be good. This isn't going to work. So there we were, and it was probably one of the first experiences where we really, really had to petition God for some help. And I'll never forget that crappy construction yard. We found this old shed out back filled with spider webs, and we all went back there, and Mirna, she's just the most faithful person. She's like, we got to kneel, brothers, and we got down on our knees and held each other's hands, and okay, God, you gotta throw us a bone, because without these joists, I don't know how we're gonna do this. We can't put a second floor in this place. We got 58 guys coming. We got to keep them busy, and we know you can make this happen. So throw us something here. We need a miracle. So for the next 12 hours, we're in her house calling all over Tijuana, no joists. And then I thought, well, I think we have enough time. We can maybe go to Lower San Diego, and called around, no joists. And we just couldn't get anything fabricated in time. And I'd worked my way up to close to Fresno, thinking, I think they could still maybe get those down here with a fee. And it wasn't happening. And I finally got a hold of a guy, and my buddy and I were taking turns and just discouraged. And I'm on the phone with a guy, I think it was a guy in Fresno, and he's like, I think I know someone in eastern Mexico, like Tecate or somewhere, that might be able to help you. And so long story short, I'm on a phone with some young man that works for some place that has lumber, and he's like, yeah, I've got some joists, and he spoke great English. He's like, I think I can make this work. He was 2.5 hours away, and we needed him the next morning. I'm like, I know this is a tall order, but let me tell you what we're doing. And he was really cool. He says, I think I can make this happen. We'll get a truck together, and we'll start driving. He's like, but I think I don't have quite enough, but I have a friend that does. And I'm like, go. Here we go again. They're going to be the wrong size and rotted. Anyway, they showed up, and we met them at about 11:30 at night, and that just doesn't happen. They don't work like that down there. And they showed up and dropped them all off, and I'll never forget it. And he said, hey, we had a few extra, and we don't have anything used for them, so we just added a few. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. We're going to have to discard these. And I was irritated, like, oh, great, what are we going to do? So we start building the house, building the place, and we got to the end and realized that we had miscalculated, and we needed exactly 3 more joists. And when that happened, and counting out, man, the voice came to head, like, I got you. I know what you're doing. You're on my errand. I've got you. And that happens all the time. And there's a picture of us. I don't know if you want to go inside that towards the latter part of this. We can look at the inside, but the very end of there's a picture of us standing below those floor joists. Yeah, this right here is a picture of us. It had been 4 days. We built a 2-story structure, about 5,800 square feet. And you can see the floor joists above our head. And those were those joists that we worked. And it was the 12th and a half hour, miracle that came. And every time I'll never forget, we had that picture taken, and those people in the middle there were the caretakers that were going to live in the top third of this building that we fleshed into an apartment as part of this build. Then we had 4 other rooms for us to sleep in. for us, a little dormitory. But that's the Ojeda family, and there still are caretakers down there, and their daughters are married now with kids, and just they're like family. But I'll never forget standing there when that photo was taken in that dusty environment, and I was exhausted. But I'm telling you, I look at that photo and I see God and the miracles that kind of, triggered what's come since then. And I'm so appreciative of those hard things that came in the beginning that caused for me to have faith, deeper faith for the hard things that come.
Because there's no such thing as a coincidence,
No.
right? Everything comes out and it gets planned out for a reason, is there for a reason. So
Exactly.
when you put that type of trust in God, then he figures out the miracles that you know what you need, and he puts them there in front of you at the right time.
Certainly does.
So kind of explain to the public what this building is used for and why you
Sure.
needed it so much.
Yeah. Well, this building is something we needed because we were finding places to stay. We had an empty hospital, like an abandoned hospital that people had ownership and we could stay in. Electricity sometimes was a luxury, sometimes not.
So you're
We stayed in Catholic churches on the
not
pews.
exactly have hotels that
Oh,
are
no.
really close or restaurants that
No.
are close. You have to
was-
find places
yeah.
to stay in.
We were kind of on a shoestring budget. We didn't really know what we were doing, and we felt bad about charging a ton. And every project we came out of pocket on these things, and it didn't really matter a whole lot, but you can only do so much of that before it becomes a little taxing. But we stayed in churches. We stayed in, LDS churches down there, which was kind of interesting. And we would stay Catholic churches. We had a disabled children's center that had rooms sometimes we would use. And then when we'd go down and do scouting projects, Marina would just put us up in her home. But yeah, this building was really significant because it gave us a place to be. It was our headquarters, a place that we could call home and do as we please with and have room for everybody. Initially, we had the caretakers up there, and we had 4 bedrooms, and we could put 6 per. We could put 24, and then people out in the common area. And that's kind of how we functioned with a couple of showers, which was a huge bonus. And since then, now we've got double the space, 10 showers, air conditioning, even like soundboards on the ceiling. So when we have discussions in the morning, it doesn't echo too much. It's not the Ritz-Carlton by any means. It's still a little rough around the edges. And there's still some, nail holes in the finish work that don't have putty. But I like it that way. It's just a good reminder of where we came from. And there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Literally, there's literally blood on some of those walls from my hands.
I love the photo with the shadow there on the roof. Just to me is significant of the effect that the imprint that you guys made on that building will always be there.
Yeah. So here we are. We made trusses with press plates, and it was such a mess. I mean, we didn't have the right equipment. We were just guessing. The place is pretty solid and doing well now, but yeah, that's just one of the days. This is day 1. We got a slab of concrete and all these new people from VIVINT helping us out, and man, thing just went up. We had one guy that kind of knew what he was doing with the roof, and in 4 days we got it done. There's my wife and my 2 daughters, and we went down there sometimes outside of just working with others to flesh out this building, and here they are sealing up seams on the floors, and we put LVT flooring in there. We worked on setting toilets. Here's where it's looking now with the ceiling tiles. Like I said, there's whiteboards and some air conditioning units on the side, so it's really come a long way. That flooring in there since been changed. That was the old LVT, and you can see the color change there. That used to be the apartment in the back, and we took the wall down. Like, it's just evolved. Yeah. So it's been a great thing. We've been really fortunate to have that, and it's been a place that we can share just the feelings and the miracles of how we started. And now we can sleep. I think there's mattresses with protectors on them that we clean each time. I think we can fit 62 in there. Which
Wow.
I haven't ran a project that big. I can handle about 35 people. Any more than that, it's a little challenging for one guy. But we have others that sometimes help with bigger projects. So, yeah.
So you got a place to land now, at
Yep.
least. You're storing your equipment here,
Yep.
supplies,
Yeah.
tools. I'm sure you got a whole bunch of tools down there
Yeah.
now. You just leave down there.
We do. So my buddy, he predominantly kind of his first right of refusal. This is kind of the final picture. You can see that's the add-on. To the far right there, that second garage door, and then it protrudes to the west, or actually south, and it's now about 7,500 square feet with more showers and more capacity. And my buddy stores all of his tools and things in this particular building. Just around the corner, I have land with Myrna, and I have my own place to store all my equipment and my vehicles. And And so it works out a little better so we can keep our stuff independent. And then we use this for sleeping and the cooking and cleaning and what have you that we have our caretakers help.
Now you got a place that everybody comes, so you get your volunteers all put together, and it's, 30, 35 people every single time?
Yeah, typically. Yeah, that's how it works.
And where are you pulling your volunteers from? Where do you get most of them?
Well, just in my neighborhood, people would hear about what you're doing, and you'd take a group down, and they'd usually have a pretty powerful experience, and they would come home and talk about it, and I'd get 12 phone calls, and as it stands now, I've got a waiting list that's huge of people that want to go, but I don't go through this pecking order of first come, first serve. It's really important to us to build the right team of people that need the experience as humans. And like I say, these projects are the springboard for the magic to happen. And God just sprinkles his magic sauce over everything when we do it that way. And so we're really mindful about who the participants are and the feelings that we feel about who should be involved. It's a big process we take, and we don't take it lightly. Because like I say, our mantra as Building Hearts Foundation is that we're, once again, we're not building homes, we're building people and trying to change people's hearts and build their hearts to feel and to have impressed upon them their divine origin and where they come from, which is deity. And that we're ordinary, yes, but man, we are extraordinary when we come together in Christ. And that's been, the thing we've tried to drive. And a lot of messaging and a lot of things that go into our projects. It's not just come show up with your tool belt, but there's things we do in the mornings and evenings. And we try to bring scripture to life, try to bring our plan, this whole world and everything God's trying to do with us. We try to remind people of who we really are. And I think that's the part of it that is so invigorating and so fulfilling over just the end result, which of course is a wonderful thing too.
So like those businessmen that went down there, you've got to have a lot of teenagers that go down. They're probably pretty cocky.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit harder around the edges.
Yep. Give
us a couple of stories of some changed lives there. Of what you literally just saw the lights turn on in teenagers' lives that all of a sudden.
I think the project that we did for Viviana, we can look at, but that project was a project, the first one I took a group of young men, ages 16 to 18, and we had some of their leaders that came as well. And there was a handful that were a little rough around the edges that had some ideas of what they were going to do in their lives after graduation, and not a lot of wholesome things, but I'm telling you, there's something about this place, this sweaty, dirty, stinky place that just changes people's hearts. And a couple of these kids that had alternate plans really kind of shaped up their life and made some differing decisions and kind of decided to walk with God a little more, which if the house burnt down, that's enough. It's about the one. And that's kind of been another really amazing thing with these projects is the one or two that find their way. They're maybe lost for a season.
Because you're not just changing lives of those people down in Mexico. Every single soul that goes down there and helps, their lives are completely different coming out of that.
Sure.
So you're helping people on both sides of the border.
That's the plan.
Just absolute miracles happening all over the place. Because it's just that selflessness. You start serving, things change. The darkness dissipates, lights come in behind the eyes, and all of a sudden there's just a whole new perspective on what's important in life, and you're
so
seeing
true.
that from both sides.
Well, that's another thing that's been amazing is, yes, the Americans were going to come down. They know who we are when we drive around. They know the gringos are here with their, with their materials and their hammers. And so the neighbors knows what's up. But I found that we come down and, we have our tools, we have our money, we have lumber, we have all the things needed to build these homes. But I've quickly learned that these people were serving down there, that they have something to give as well. And I always, when we select a family, it's just, an intimate little setting, my wife and I, Myrna, and, the family that's there. And it's usually an emotional thing when we've selected them. That's a pretty special thing when we just know, at that moment, all of us together, that God has sanctioned this thing that's coming. And it's an opportunity for me to remind them that I want you to know that this night that, God, he's mindful of you. And we're here, and of course we're trying to facilitate something, but he's the one that brought us to you. And I need something from you. And they always look at me like, what could I offer? What could I offer you? I got nothing. And I let them know that I'm bringing down a group of people that is maybe lost in their way. And maybe they've kind of forgotten some of the things that are second nature to you. And I just want you to be praying for these people coming that need what you have, which is strength in God. and dependence on him. Could you do that for me? And their chest comes out and they just, absolutely, I can do that. Of course. And they do, and then we bring the group down, and from time to time I'll get a dad or a mom that pulls me aside and says, hey, Daniel, I just want you to know we've been praying. And we really hope that we're going to do a good job while you're here. And, we are rich in the ways of the material means of the world here. But man, are those people rich in the ways that matter more, which is rich in spirit. And man, do they have something to offer. And yes, the people we take down always come home with more than they could ever give.
So with a lot of teenagers that do go down, you get back home, because I doubt not all those parents are going down.
No. I mean, it's changed a little since then.
What comments are you getting back from parents after the kids come back from that experience?
Yeah, I have yet to have an experience where someone comes back and says, I really wish I hadn't have done that. It's just something about charitable service. You can't walk away from that feeling bad. Even if you go into it really hard, and I could share a story or two of some kids that were just brutal. But the parents are generally extremely grateful.
Just changes in their kids' lives?
Oh, yeah.
Tell the audience, what are they expressing? What are the changes? Because they want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, just this last trip, we had a family down there where, the son had kind of made some decisions to go off and do things. And from a church perspective, there's, I don't want to say full expectations, but some very good things that can happen to youth, like charitable service and mission service and things of that nature. And really didn't have much interest in that. And our final night of the experience, I get the whole group together in a circle, we kind of share, and I want everyone to share something poignant that happened to them. And this young man said, I don't know if I've ever really even felt the spirit in my life of God. And man, have I this trip, and I know I felt it. And I've been so heavily influenced by all these things that's gone down. And I just know with everything in me, I just want to go home. I'm going to change things around. I'm going to head out. I want to be a missionary. I want to go do some good in this world. And it just changed him to the core. And his mother was just beyond excited, because obviously taking a child out of their norm and throwing them into a hard environment, those that have served missions in our church, I mean, of course it's difficult, but it's very refining. And it's a good way to springboard into life. And so we've had that experience, and I've had many experiences like that, where we take youth and they come home and they have a spring in their step, a little bit of a difference. And there's an imprint in their heart. They feel something. And we don't change if we don't feel it here. You can hear it all day long, but until you feel it, there's no change.
Well, you got to be seeing a little bit of yourself there, because you told us a story where you're taking produce and you're putting it into a trunk of a car, and
Right.
It just changed you.
Yeah.
Are you seeing those same type of changes, those same type of lights all of a sudden in the next generation, these
Yes.
kids?
Yeah, we've seen some life-altering decisions, both in those we take down youth. But the ironic thing is, most parents, it's funny, they're like, oh, we're so excited to take our kids down to have this experience. It's going to be so good for our kids. Our kids need this. My daughter needs that. And I had a guy from Logan. He had to have been close to 70. Held a lot of prominent positions in his church, and was taking his 15-year-old boy down. They had a child late in life. They were the coolest people, this couple. And he was the same thing. Oh, I'm so excited for my boy to have this. He needs this. He needs to have his eyes open. He's so entitled. He has everything, and he needs to be appreciative and go down and see what he needs to be grateful for, on and on and on and on. And we were packing up our vehicles to come home after our experience, and I saw this man in the corner, and he was kind of off on his own. And I just felt like I should go over, and I did, and he was very emotional. And he looks at me and he says, man, Daniel, I got to apologize. He's like, there I was talking about how much my son needed this experience. He said, but I'm here to tell you that I needed this so bad for me. I had no idea how bad I needed this. And he just gave me a great hug, and we just embraced each other as two brothers in Christ. We walked away better people.
That's what you live for, right?
It is.
That's what brings this whole experience home, is knowing you're just changing lives everywhere, and it's just not replaceable. It's just not replaceable. Those experiences they will never forget that imprints upon them, and they're going to be able to transmit that to the next generation as well. And you've probably affected you look at this and you're saying, okay, I've affected this family, and a few people are here, but the way that's going to spread, you will have affected thousands by the time those feelings get out to everybody that this is affecting. It's just going to go from person to person to person. It's not going to stop with just the few people you affected down in Mexico and the few people that went with you. It's their positive experiences, the positive attitude, the selflessness, the selfishness that all of a sudden dissipates is going to spread to other people, and you will have affected thousands. I mean, you're going to get to the other side of this life, and you're going to see thousands saying, hey, because of you, all these people were affected because of that experiences. I gleaned from that, and I was able to go out and do this, this, and this, and then that person was able to go out and do this, this, and this, and it's like that passing it forward type of message. It just keeps spreading, and it's just not going to stop. That's the ball that just keeps on rolling.
How has it enriched your home, your family, your relationship with your wife, your children?
Well, I feel like, and scripturally, and it talks about how charity can conquer all things. And, I say all the time to the youth that I work with that all is a big word. It's a big one. And, when you're feeling down and out and life is not going your way, strap on a tool belt, go knock on your neighbor's door.
Get out of your shell. Get out of your box.
Right. And how's it affected my family? It's pretty sobering, actually, to see my kids be similar and want to do good by others. I hear, at Christmas time, my son, did some pretty neat things with this Nintendo Switch that he got for Christmas. And, they found a needy individual through Facebook Marketplace and ended up giving it to her. And what ensued in the messaging back and forth between them, I know it's important to them. And I feel like, we were raised, I raised my kids well. We could do whatever we wanted, and we had nice things, and I can afford the things I want. But the things that matter to me and what has, I think, mattered to them now is they're kicking off their own life and their own journey. There's a lot of similar characteristics because they know where to find joy. And I'd burn my house down and jump my nice cars off of a cliff before I would give up these experiences. And I think my kids would do the same. They come once a year with us, no matter what, for these experiences. My kids have been down 20 times. They're all very competent. My daughter was 13 and teaching moms how to hang sheetrock, how to cut it, how to measure. My other daughter was, I think she was 12 and hanging a circuit box and putting in breakers and wiring an entire home and taking a group of moms and they flipped that breaker the first time and you thought they invented fire. They were so excited. And it's just been so enabling for my kids. Yeah. Oh, it's always a wonderful thing when it does because you get a short somewhere and it's hours to find.
I'm envious of the lifetime of memories that you guys have built together. And one day you're going to have grandkids. This could get big.
We have our first coming in August.
Oh, wow.
But this is a legacy I want to continue on. My kids have just been really impacted by it. And I'm just super grateful that sometimes I wonder, why me? And how did this fall in my lap the way that it did? But I really believe that when you want to do good, and if you want to be on the Lord's errand and you ask him for opportunities, he'll give them. You just gotta ask.
Got to get out of your box. You got to get out of your own little world,
right?
Out of your little shell.
For sure.
Realize there's more out there than you.
Yeah, I mean, look, you started in construction and now you're hosting a podcast and all this technology and all these things, and probably wasn't the original intent 10, 15 years ago.
Wasn't the original intent, but
you were led to it.
Yeah, it led to it.
Yeah.
Let's go through Viviana here.
Okay.
So kind of walk us through this next project.
Well, Viviana, this project was in 2017, and I was looking for a project for a group of young men for my church as well. And I was working with them as one of their youth leaders, and I went down and we visited several opportunities, and this particular project was a mess. Where they're standing there is probably from grade of the street up is maybe 40 feet, and it was a legit climbing up tire stairs and literally rappelling to get up there. These pictures here are more kind of during the project. I'm not sure the order, but yeah, we're putting up walls and hanging, sheetrock, the whole thing. This was a 3-bedroom. It was up on a slab of concrete that was that's the final night. But it was up on a slab of concrete. There you can see it. That was when we were finished.
This is the completed project, right?
Yeah, that is. But that slab of concrete there we earned it. That was a hard one. And that was a good month and a half in making. The miracles that ensued from that are just incredible. we found a gentleman to help us with it. This is the inside of their existing structure they were in above.
This was before the building, or was this?
This is before. This is like their old structure. I think if you continue, there's going to be, yeah, there you go. So that's what it looked like when we got there. And over to the right, it's kind of hard to see underneath the picture-in-picture, but there's a staircase of tires that goes, and the final ascent.
Just
So
right
this
here
is
where
the
my
one where the
cursor is.
kids have
Yes.
to climb home every day.
They have to climb home, and the mother had fallen going up and down this twice and broken her leg, which is pretty catastrophic. It's a landslide. Yeah, you can see here, this is how they go home. And
So literally the kids, this is the only way to get home every single day.
Yep. Up, home, and back. So this
Because
final
they literally
ascent.
have to do a rope climb up
Yeah.
the dirt and
Yep.
the tires.
And the group I took down all had an opportunity to go up and look at that old structure because we left it up there. And I
Súbete,
think
no
there's
pelees,
actually
sube,
a family up there
Déjala que
again,
se suba, mija.
Sube, no
a
pelees.
niece or a nephew with their kids
Déjala que se suba.
above the brown home we built. But yeah, it's a mess. And these little kids just, that's all they knew. And they were happy.
I mean, that's, and when it rains,
Oh, yeah, you can imagine. It's a waterfall city, and the mud and slippery. It was really bad.
I mean, they have to, every day, this is the only way to get home.
Yep.
And even the littlest
With your groceries.
daughter there, with your groceries, with whatever you've got
Yeah.
to climb up there.
In your dress, going to church. Yep, that's how they made it home. That you can see that structure, that white structure was a bunch of old garage doors they were trying to add on, and the earth was giving way, and we had to do some serious fortification of the foundation for this based on some things we found as we dug in. But I selected this project just feeling so strongly. God just led me there. You can see here, this is when we started hauling away some of the garbage, and all this had just slid down off of the hill. And
So quite an amount.
Goodness.
It was
How do you haul
terrible.
that off? You just have to hire trucks to come and take
you,
it?
you can see there in the frame there to the left, there's a
Yep.
dump truck, and it was probably 15 loads to get it out of there. And then we had tractors in there, and then human labor actually digging with shovels to get where the pad was going to be. So, yeah, you can see there they are. There's a group of Haitian refugees trying to integrate their life after some catastrophic events in Haiti, with the hurricanes and so on, and also some political issues.
And they
yeah, there they are.
hand dug that, you were saying.
Where they're
hand
standing,
dug-
yeah, we had a tractor do the lower portion, but where they're standing there, they hand dug it out. Took them about 5 or 6 days. There were like 10 of them.
Wow.
And then the concrete started to be poured, and yeah, that's kind of a smaller resolution, but you can see the forms. An interesting story there, as those were being poured, I think it was the second one, there was so much in there, and when you pour something like that, you need to pour them in stages. You know, you put 25% in each, and then you come back where it sets a little,
Yeah, it'll just blow out on you.
and we had one blow out.
I started off life as a concrete contractor,
so
so,
you
I
know
know
the drill.
exactly what you're looking at
Yeah.
here.
So that
Concrete
second-
is so heavy, liquid.
So anyway, I wasn't down there. I was managing this using FaceTime, and it was brutal. But that second pillar, the guy that was helping us, it did blow out. And it was a lot of concrete, and it's expensive, and we were so over budget. And it was just such a blow to everybody. And I'm on the phone when this is happening with Myrna. She's like watching, and I see that it's blowing
So
out. She's
you're
just-
just so the audience understands, you're paying people to
Yeah.
set this up and get this
Yes.
thing done, so it's ready just to build
Yeah.
a house when you guys arrive.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pre-work that has to be
Yes.
done, and you're paying local people to do that.
Yes. I want something to start with, and it needs to be either a slab of concrete, a suspended slab of concrete, or a suspended slab of a wood floor. And this thing was a whole new level. I had no idea what I was doing. But we got into it and found that the soil, there was no bedrock. We had to like dig down, and it's a ridiculous amount of concrete. But that second one blew out. And I'm on the phone, and Myrna's like, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" I'm like, "Do you have buckets, anything?" She's like, "I don't know if there's no buckets." And the guy that we hired, he was addicted to drugs and was reformed, and that was a whole nother story, amazing. And he was just a smartest guy, but they needed buckets. And we had some people that were coming that were close by that they could get to help, some neighbors. And all of a sudden, there's one. Just Myrna looks over and she's like, "Oh my gosh, guy's walking up the street. He has 12 buckets, like on an arc, just walking.
Wow.
Hola, buenos dias. You need some help? Yeah. So this guy, like, all these buckets, and all these men take all the buckets and scoop up the most they could. They harvested up about 80% of it, and they're all climbing up and reinforcing, and got it back into the next post, and then reinforced it for them to finish it off. And then the guy they're cleaning all the buckets out. I'm talking to Myrna, and crisis averted, and the guy just stacks them all up and just continues walking. Like, you can't make of this stuff. Like, how
And
how
then
in the
he
world?
faded away and disappeared.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, thank you, God. Thank you for that angel wand, and his dirty old buckets. But, just that was one story. But this thing where you see it as it stands. I selected the project. I'm sitting in an airplane. So just imagine, I saw the mess, all the garbage. And I was just feeling the spirit of, like, we got to do this. This is going to be great for these young men. And they have, boys, and this is going to be wonderful. And I just felt it was the right mix. So I'm on the airplane flying home, and I have my laptop out, sitting in bulkhead close to first class, and some guy's in first class and is getting booted because the paying passenger came. He's irritated. And, of course, he sits next to me, and I'm passing judgment, like, sorry, pal. Sorry you got to come back here with the steward and deal with us. And he comes and sits next to me, and he takes interest in my laptop. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm running a charity in Mexico. We're going to build a house for this family, and I'm trying to figure out what to do here. And he's like, wow, that's amazing. Talk to me about it. And so within about 5 or 6 minutes, he's like, I love what you're doing. And I remember before he sat down, I'm thinking, Lord, how am I going to do this? This is going to be so expensive. And we're on a shoestring budget, and I'm going to probably need $3,000 or $4,000 more. Come to find out, it was like 6x that. This man says, I'd love to help. Can I give you $5,000? I'm like, you have no idea. Pulls out his phone, logs into Charles Schwab, gets my 513 number, puts it in there, and he clicks submit, and you'll have a check here in a week. Thank you. And I'm like, I don't know if you believe in the big guy upstairs. He's like, oh yeah, I do. He's like, I've had a lot of good things in my life. I'm like, well, you need to know, pal, that you're a direct answer to my prayer sitting here in this seat right now. And, I just sat there, and just the voice came. I've moved mountains. I've parted the sea. Daniel, money's trivial. Don't worry about it. Just press forward in faith. And then it continues on, and there was one mishap after the next. Myrna fell, broke her wrist. I mean, it was just so many obstacles, and many times we're like, should we just cut bait? We got to do something different. This is just too much. And then she'd be like, no. We're on the phone. She's like, Daniel, get on your knees. And she would offer a heartfelt prayer. Lord, we need your help. And it just kept coming and coming. And just the week before we were to go, she's funny. Her finances are on notebooks and pages and napkins. And the way she does stuff is so irritating. It's like, Myrna, come on, you got to get organized. And we're like siblings. But I get a phone call, and I ignore it. I'm at dinner with some friends in Layton with my wife and 2 friends of ours. And it keeps ringing and ringing. I look down, and it's a GroupMe message with a little picture, and I see some receipts. And then she's got, help, call. She's like, lo siento, I forgot. I have all these receipts. And, it was like $3,500 of stuff. And we were already so tapped with fundraising, and we were probably 4x over what we were thinking we were going to be just prepping. I spent more prepping that than I, at the time, built the house. And we had all these amazing things happen to get the money, but this final thrust, I just remember feeling just this big blow and thinking, how am I going to do this? Like, I've already put so much into this. And anyway, what happened is that evening I get a Venmo that pops in, and a little message and email like, hey, are you still doing this? And I think it'd be great. And $1,000 comes in. The next morning, someone knocks on my door. Hey, my sister wanted to help. You guys are going down there, and my son's there, and check for $500. 2 hours later, you get the phone call. Hey, are you still needing some help? Like, oh my gosh, yeah. And it got down to the point where we had about, I think it was $1,500 remaining. And someone at my church the next day, hey, you're going down to this thing. And my husband and I woke up this morning. We felt strongly we needed to ask you, like, we feel like you need something. I'm like, yeah, we're pretty behind. And she's like, give me a number. I'm like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable doing that. She's like, well, is it big or is it small? I'm like, it's kind of big. And she's like, that's all I need to hear. So she, before they leave for Jackson, a couple hours later, runs over a check. And I'm down to like $500 remaining. And I'm thinking, we're there. We've arrived. So that evening, or it was the next day, Monday, I was helping a buddy spray out some doors with his house in his garage, and got a phone call from one of the mothers of the participants going, and she was sobbing. And she's just like, oh my gosh. And I thought, oh great, her husband and son are going to bail, and they're going to, I'm going to give them a refund. I'm more upside down. I'm just thinking the worst. And she just fairly composed herself and said, my parents, you got to know they're really poor. They're in a really bad way. And my son's been doing some fundraising with family. And this is a story of, those that have the least give the most. And the parents, wanted to cut a check for $500 to help with this project. And
you can't make that up.
You can't.
You can't make that up.
The neatest part of the story is this, though. We're teaching these young men how to handle some tools as one of our little activities. And when we were doing that, this was like a week or two before. And one of the young men came up to me with a crunkled up bill, and He's like, hey, did you drop this? I'm like, no. He's like, oh, just put it towards the project. I'm like, oh, just check in my folder. So he did. And then fast forward now, I fix the doors. I get the phone call. I'm talking to this girl, and it was really bolstering to her faith and her family to have this experience of her parents. And then the neatest thing, though, I went back home, took my shower. I'm in bed with my laptop out, just kind of reconciling all these things that were coming in, and put in the $500. And then there was $5.12 remaining. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what a miracle! Down to almost the whole thing. But a voice came and said, hey, don't forget about the $5. And then it dawned on me, go look in your folder. And so I got out of bed, walked into my kitchen, and I found that folder, and I pulled out that bill. And it was a $5 bill.
Stop it.
And I fell to my knees in my kitchen that day, and I thanked God, not for the $5, for him touching my soul, bolstering my faith, and preparing me for so many things that has come since. And you can't make it up. And these experiences were so incredible because these young men, I was able to share all of them with them along the way. And when they showed up and sat on that concrete pad up on the edge with pride, like, we've been part of this, they were vested. And at the end of it, it meant something. It was so much more powerful because of being able to have these faith-promoting stories for them to know that these things they've been taught their life, they're real. And God shows up if you show up. And to this day, these boys and I'll see them at the grocery store. They're in their 20s with kids, and I get a big old hug, and do you remember that time? And it's something that'll never be forgotten. So,
such an example of faith preceding the miracle.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, you just can't make that up. I mean, to have that come out so exact
it's crazy.
You're not making that stuff up.
No.
So you know that the miracle's there. You know there's a bigger power out there. It's just not deniable at that point. You can't sit there and look at that and say God doesn't exist.
No.
And so everybody out there looking at this, there's like, doesn't matter what religion you are. We all have a certain faith in 100%. God, whether we're Christian, we're Jewish. We all have that certain faith, and we know that He puts things in place when you're actually putting out the effort.
Right.
When you take that step forward, He's waiting for you to take a few steps, and then He'll go out there with you.
It's so true.
If you don't ever take the step, then the miracles never happen.
No.
But if you, I'm just going to go. I have no idea how to do this. I don't know. I have any idea what I'm doing, but I'm just going to start.
Right.
I'm just going to go, and we'll figure it out along the way. When He sees that type of faith, when He sees that type of work ethic, He said, okay, let's go too. And then He'll just start putting the things in front of you. But He puts things in front of you just in a way, just like you're seeing, where you recognize that He's there, that you recognize it's not just you doing it.
So true.
And then as long as the appreciation is there, the gratitude is there, then the miracles will keep happening. If the appreciation wanes, if the gratitude wanes, then the miracles will also stop happening. So it's
true.
It's the absolute gratitude from you, from the people you're serving, that keeps it going.
So true.
So you have this project, and up here at the top here, you can see that the tires where they're crawling up. So their original residence is like way above this.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they own that whole mountainside there.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and it
shockingly,
can't be expensive property because
you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
In Tijuana these days, you're buying a parcel that's 10 by 20 meters, and currently that's costing about $45,000.
That's crazy.
If you do the math on acreage, you're pushing $350,000 an acre, $350,000 an acre, and that's for non-improved property. It's just corrupt. It's terrible. So these generationally owned land is the only way. They can't afford it.
So I was looking at your slab from the top down.
Yeah, that's up on that tire hill, and those boys, that's the day that they sat there taking pride in that piece of concrete. They knew what went into that. They heard the faith-promoting stories. And I've only shared a couple. There's a dozen more. And it made a difference for them. They worked really proud. But yeah, you can see, the final product there with those lights blazing. And
so now we go back to the construction. So now you're building. So now everybody can recognize that when you're building this thing, you're clear up on this slab above the ground.
And with that wall
putting this thing together.
That wall they're putting up there, once it was set, we were about 4.5 feet away from high voltage lines. As a matter of fact, when I was up on the roof, I was pulling a 20-foot 2x4 that was just slightly damp, and I had some leather gloves on, and I bumped that line, and and I knew it.
You felt it.
I'm like, hey guys, let us leaders pull this up. And we poured some concrete and made
They're
those
not
steps.
climbing up tires
No.
anymore. I mean, they're
No, we made these little platforms, and we made some treads, and you can see kind of the left there. There's one more platform, and then it goes up to the cement landing area for the door. And once we got all those done, we had Viviana from the top. She was up in her old place tending to some kids.
able to walk down.
We had her come down, and she sobbed. And there's
more
something
mud,
about
no more
well,
tires.
those young men are just looking at her like she's crying over stairs, but they were so proud of these stairs, and they all were like tearful as she walked down sobbing those steps for the first time. Just the lessons you learn from something so simplistic is
a set
incredible.
of stairs.
Yeah.
We all be looking at that set of stairs. Do I really have to climb up
Yeah.
those things? And then
Yeah.
she's like, that's
I'd be
the dream.
complaining about the finish on that concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, there you can see the draft. Look at above that door frame, and the door was just holy, and the air and the draft, and it's chilly and just rough.
You go from there to completed project. We'll look at the completed project one more time here so
Yeah.
everybody can see that.
So that was the next morning. All the boys wanted to go see it in the light, and it was amazing. That night when we left, you could see lights on inside the windows. And one thing I do as kind of a tradition for me is we get all the people loaded up, we got all our tools ready to leave, and you hug it out and do all of that. But I get out and I usually run back and I just take a minute and I look. And it's so cool. I get to see the light in the house. But man,
Electricity's working, the
Yeah.
plumbing's working.
But what I'm going after though is for me to feel that spiritual light, and what an amazing feeling that is to know that the Lord was with us and the miracle was there, and these boys watched something go up that we had no business in doing, and they all see it as a miracle that it went up, and that was done in 4 days.
4 days.
Yeah,
I even see that you guys laid the
We did.
rock out here down here below.
yeah, a
the
little landscaping,
little landscaping there.
a little dryscape. It's kind of funny. And since then, the woman, her story is amazing. She was in such a bad way. Her husband was really abusive and drinking all their money, and the kids were going hungry, and she just didn't have the willpower to get rid of him. She needed him because of the circumstances. But this home was her land, her familial land, and she was finally able to gain enough independence to get rid of that dead weight. And she started a catering business. We were able to get some resources to get some stoves. And to this day, she has a taco stand, and she holds her head high. She's confident. And she's
That's
raising
awesome to hear.
her kids, and the kids are doing well. She's just beautiful. You just look in her eyes, and you see just a ray of hope. And once again, the whole house could burn down, and that's enough.
So one of your older projects is this one, Margarita.
Yeah.
So kind of walk us through that, and then we'll walk through, just so the audience knows, going to walk through about 3 other projects besides this one, and then and see the kind of great work that you're doing. So let's start off with this one. So kind of go through Margarita and tell us what happened here.
Okay. Well, there's Margarita and Ignacio, and he goes by Nacho Libre. It's kind of funny guy. But Margarita is a little older. I think she's in her 70s now, and you can see Jasmine to her right. She has Down syndrome. And at the time,
Right here.
to
Oh,
our
yeah,
right.
Down syndrome.
Yeah, Down syndrome daughter. And the older daughter to the left, she was married and lived a couple homes above and had a very abusive husband. And she would come out with bruises and bumps, and it was just really hard to see. You see a lot of that down there. But Margarita had these little kids with her a lot, and this was the home we found her in.
Home.
And you can see that staircase there to the left. It's kind of underneath our picture there. Yeah, that staircase goes down about 100 yards to the road, and it's pretty steep. Doesn't look like it there, but it is. And we had to lift every single piece of material and concrete, and you name it, up there. It was a suspended slab, but yeah, that place is rough. And you can see it was just built with local garbage, and she'd been there for 20-something years. And we just knew that she was the one that we needed to work with. And here's when we started deconstructing this place. This is when we were doing it on our own. I got down there on a pre-trip project for 4 days, and we tore the place down and got our subfloor in.
Did she have power in that?
She did. She had power, and when it rained, this is up on a hill, because of no infrastructure, water would come through her home. And she had a little shovel and a broom and a hose, and she had to shovel the mud and dirt out of her house every time it rained. And she did it with a smile on her face because she had a home. And she was so amazing and
So
so
this is
full
taking
of
the home
gratitude.
down, right?
This is us taking the home down.
So you're going from
From
this
that to that.
to this, and from what it looks like, it probably didn't take much to
No.
dismantle that.
No, I think if you had a couple firecrackers, it might have done the job. And you can see the little tire wall there again. There's tons of retaining walls made out of tires that we left there to keep things in order. So we had a group of VIVINT employees. This was an interesting part of a blitz we did for VIVINT. This was after that first one with Maria, and this was a group from Canada. And we had the objective of building 5 homes in 6 days. And they had their media crew down there, and it was insane. And the project I was on was the most difficult because out of the 3 of us doing the projects, I probably had a little more skill, which wasn't saying a lot. And we were working in a rough environment. And the home where below there you can see a blank piece of land, that home had burnt down, which allowed for us to have a staging area. There would have been no way, and it was years prior. But we were carrying up 2x4s one at a time. You can see that chain, every little piece. It was pretty powerful. But yeah, 5 homes in 6 days. I mean, this is back when I used 2x6 for the roof. It was heavy, it was brutal, and you got the whole crew lifting this big section in. And we stick built everything, and it was just so out of standard protocol that you would do here. And and here's the final product. We had a group of 58 that came for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then another group of, I think it was 60 that came Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So they divided and conquered, and my project was a full 6 days to finish, and the rest of them were 3 days finish, and then the next 3 days. So we kind of in the evenings went around so that everyone could see each other's projects, and this is kind of the final project they came to see, and it was. I was really a little nervous with everyone standing on that little porch we made.
Now you know it's sturdy.
Well, we didn't have time to pour concrete posts below, so we went and found chunks of sidewalk and dug them in and created our own footings, and then just stick built the thing in. But man, was Margarita proud of that place, and she wanted her home varnished. She didn't want that wood color gone, so we varnished her home. But it was just such a beautiful experience, and this was another one that I took that photo, and everyone was down below, and man, did I feel God with me. And once again, the faith promotion, like, I can't believe that this was done. And I think you maybe have heard this in Latin America. They have this term, gracias a Dios, thanks to God. Everything is glory to God, thanks to God. And that has kind of been what I've learned.
From that, that's the great before to that, the after picture there.
Yeah. She called that her castle, and we would bring people to visit her from time to time, participants for future projects, to let them see what we were going to kind of do. And we had a big poster because the house was gone, and I wanted people to see some of her condition that we served with. And she's kept it. We were going to chuck it, and she's like, no. And to this day, we bring people to visit her, and she pulls that poster out and opens it up, and she just cries and talks about her feelings and her experiences. And it's never about the house. It's about the wonderful people that blessed the lives of her grandchildren and her. And I mean, I can't get enough of it.
I mean, I can see that.
Yeah.
There's just no way you get enough of that.
Yeah. So this house here, once again, some generational land, really run down, really leaky, lots of mold. And we met Estella and her family. And down here, it's kind of at the end of a road that's dirt. And when it rains, everything kind of floats and all the garbage comes down towards the end of this area. And out in front of this, you can't really see well to the right more. It kind of turns into a little canyon, and it's just washed out. And it was just a mess. It was hard to get down there. But yeah, we went down and visited them. My daughter and I were on a scouting trip. And we'd met her once before, years earlier, and just the Lord didn't guide us to her at that time. We just didn't select her. But we felt strongly to go back, and we did. And so I think the next photo might be showcasing who they are. There they are. There's my daughter, Aubrey. She's 21 now. But I like taking my kids with me because it's a pretty special thing to be guided and for them to feel the Lord directing and how he's in charge. But yeah, we went back, and when we selected them, this was a couple months later, my wife was with me, and we went and let Carmen know that we're going to build this home for her. There's actually a series of 3 homes there. There's Estella and Montserrat and Carmen. Carmen has her twins, pretty rough circumstance as well. But
So are we looking at the 3 homes, or
no, this one is the same one. I guess I could have included some other photos. They really weren't much of homes. But there you go. This is perfect. So you can see there to the left, you can kind of see how it canyons down, but that little white structure in the back, and then there's one behind it, kind of tan. They were trying for years to put homes together, but they could never get enough on the roofing to make it not rot. So they weren't usable, and they were just discouraged. So we actually built 2 homes back there, the one in the back, one in front of it, and then the previous picture you saw with Carmen, we put a house there that would be to the left. And that's just right across the way at the end, kind of there. I call it the Mexican cul-de-sac. And as it is now, it's all cleaned up, all brand new. There was Estella's home we built. That was the one in the far back, the picture you saw. That was a group of families. And we built that home in 3 days. And then after that, this is Carmen's across the street that we built last year with a group. And that's where that home was with the woman and twins that we tore down. And then here's the inside of Montserrat's house, where this is my family that was down there with us. And I think the next photo showcases the exterior of all 3 of them. But just these nights when we're done, we take a photo with the family. We give them a picture of Christ and encourage them to realize that he's the reason for all of us becoming, brothers and sisters and being together. But you can see the gray house in the back, and you can see Montserrat's house there in the tan in front of it, and then the little tan structure in front of that is a little hair salon. We built that at the same time as we built Carmen's home across the way last year. I felt strongly that we needed to help her. She had put the concrete down, and over time, over a couple of years, was able to afford it and piece it in. And it was pretty rough, hard to work with. We had to modify that a bit. But when we selected Carmen, we came back to start the project that Monday morning. And before we start, the Sunday night prior, we go visit them just so the families that we take down can know who they're going to be working for. And we let Montserrat know that we're not only going to be building a home for your cousin here, Carmen, but we're going to build you a salon. And since then, her confidence is amazing. Her and, they were so in a bad way. And Montserrat also had a husband, or a common law marriage, if you will, that just wasn't anything good. He was really suppressive of her and her goals and never really supporting her. And he's since been booted from the scenario, and the situation has been a good thing. But she has a vehicle that she had confidence to get and have on terms. It's not super nice, but it's a great car. She works 1 day a week for where she was working prior for the $2 an hour, and the rest of the time she's working in her own shop now. She has her hair license, so she's sanctioned. She's got her nail tech license, and convinced Carmen that had no confidence to do that as well. And now Carmen's going to cosmetology school, and they're going to work together as single moms and raise their families. And Montserrat, now they've gone to the gym. They're taking pride in themselves. They're getting healthier. When we were just down there last week and a half ago, Montserrat's down 35 pounds. Carmen's lost 50. They look great. They feel great. And the most wonderful thing is when we go there, they come out of their homes and run, and we embrace. And there's just a love there, just a commonality of having this experience of God loving on us that we'll never forget. But those 2 ladies are going to go places. They brought in, the city came in and assessed the road situation that was terrible and brought in about 50 loads of dirt. They're improving the area. Before long, they'll have pavement because now they're leading the charge. They've got the confidence to go make a difference. And one home, one nail at a time. And
well, that's what I was saying earlier, even with the kids and stuff like that. It's more than a home. I can't imagine how much self-esteem you're building. Just to be able to uplift and say, I have some value here. I can do stuff. There's a place I have a little more peace, or something I can take care of. And just that self-esteem, it just ignites and it just takes off. And it builds not just the 2 women there, the single women, but then it's going to build their kids. It's going to build the neighborhood. The neighbors start feeling those same effects, and they'll probably start taking care of their own places, and
it makes
see them putting an effort into it, and all of a sudden they want to put a little more effort into it. It just gets contagious.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing about this whole thing is that self-esteem that just builds.
Right.
That a home can provide. Just something that's decent enough that I have a good bed to sleep on. I got food on the table.
Yep.
And it's just that miracle just brings light into their eyes that you can't get any other way.
I just sometimes it never ceases to amaze that this is happening. Like I am so over the top grateful and appreciative that God has entrusted me to do these things. Because it's the joy of my life. It's been fulfilling. A job is a means to an end. And of course, I tell people all the time, you don't have to go to Mexico to do this and feel these things. Yeah, it's nice to get the noise out of your life, and it's a little bit more profound as far as the impact of the surroundings and the humility and getting to your, malleable state quicker just because you're humble environment, humble people, humble situation, humble everything. And so what happens? You become humble. And within 24 hours, the hardest of hard, where they're have a major attitude by the end of it. They're just weeping, feeling their divine entity and connecting with God the way we're supposed to. And it's just a consistent thing over and over every time. We bring down a group of people and we lay out what we have on the altar of skills and abilities. We actually ask the parents of these groups to share with us a gift they see in their child. And we have kind of like a meeting, a little fireside, if you will, the first night before we start working. And it kind of goes through just a lot of things about just being foreordained to come down here and do good. And it sums up with just talking about spiritual gifts and how we're all sitting here and we're offering our best to the Lord. And here they all are. It's on a big poster and it's unique to the group. It's like, look at this. You in this room are these things. But there's no hammer swinging and there's no nail gun use or building a wall or 16-inch on center or skills and abilities, but it doesn't matter because those things that are missing, God's going to put them in there. And we're going to start day one a little rough, but man, he's going to refine us and we're going to shine. And it's because he's going to be there with us in the end. And we're going to see this structure go up. We're going to see the miracle because he can make better of us than we could ever do on our own. And when we come collectively together in like-minded spirit, he's there. He's in the midst and he makes it work. And that's the messaging, like you say, it's just that light. And the ripple effect is endless, and it's not just there, it's here. And all the stories, and having done this for 15 years now, the patterns you get to see and watch. And I get to go back and see these people and see what they do. Some, they have a dry house, but it's filthy, and they didn't really take it as a catalyst, but the vast majority do. And you come back, and there's a spring in their step. A new job, an extra $1 an hour. They got out of a rut. They gave up a vice. Their relationship got better. Their kids, we leave them with a laptop. The kids now are connected and a little better in school. And it's just fun to watch that and to see that ripple effect. That's what we're going for.
It's amazing. It's amazing the ripple effect. How many, it's touching us. I'm sure it's touching viewers. Do you have people reaching out to you who want to take this some other place or get bigger or?
Yeah, I've had a path that I've thought all along. And when I started my charity, Building Hearts Foundation, my intent originally was to scale. And I was all gung-ho and had all things planned and ready and people that could, step up and do more and kind of lead projects like me. And I met a woman that kind of enlightened me and basically stated, if you're not retired and you go down this path, you're going to lose the magic. And it's going to turn into a job and be brutal. And just said that you need to have a little more bandwidth in order to take this experience and basically scale it out. So I'm planning on doing something of that nature when I'm retiring here in the next few years. But until then, I just have felt really strongly and directed just to kind of keep things as they are and to learn. And I've learned a lot. And I'm preparing more for what I want to do. But you're right, I have a lot of people that have reached out that have contributed, businesses and other people, to sponsor youth that can't maybe afford to go.
Where can people go to contribute? If you have a listener who's just like, I can't go, I want to donate, I want to help.
Well, buildinghearts.org, buildingheartsfoundation.org, either of those will get you to my website. It's not, over the top, but it gets the job done, and there's information there.
And we'll put a link.
Yeah.
On here for viewers to see.
Yeah, you can get a hold of us at usa@godandcountrypodcast.com and we'll facilitate donations, or you can go to his website.
Sure.
Let's go to this next project here.
Okay.
You've got...
This is Christian and Jessica and their little boy Rocky, and we built this home. Well, we visited them and met them 2 years ago, January. There in the background, you can see it's pretty rural. That cement structure is a bathroom. He was given a toilet, a sink, and a urinal, hilarious enough. And he built this thing with pride, and it's tiled, and it's actually a really nice bathroom, and they lived in it. He lived in his bathroom in the area where the shower would be until he received some help from his wife, Jessica's brother, and they built a 10 by 10 structure to the left, and it sits right on top of the septic tank.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah. You'll see some photos of it. So, once again, I'm kind of out of order here. But this is kind of the work environment that we were on.
Let's skip to the end here, and then we'll come back. How's
Yeah,
that?
okay.
See what we got. Well, that's all we got. So you just got construction pictures.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, there's construction pictures. I apologize. But we found that property and just knew we were supposed to help him. Once again, his story was interesting, that land and how he got it. A God-fearing man just looking to do right by his family, and found the property for a good price and sold half of it to someone and came out debt-free. But we went down and visited him and decided we were going to add on to the structure. The bathroom was good. The septic tank bedroom was not ideal, so we turned it in more of a storage area. And
Is this
sheetrocked
kitchen
it.
counters that you're?
Yes. Yeah, we built all the furniture for the house. They're rudimentary, as you can see in here. There's a pantry back in the back. It's just stick construction, 2x4s and boards and paint, and we got moms and kids building them and painting them and sanding them down, and they take pride.
What is this flooring?
It's cement. That's all.
Okay. Looks great.
Yeah, over time they'll usually lay tile, and we want them to have that opportunity to do that on their own. You have to draw a line. But
You go to $1 million homes now they've decided to do cement flooring and they paint and stain it.
Well, I've thought about getting a grinder and acid staining the grounds. There's a lot of things we could possibly do. It's just, you got to draw the line. But as you can see, we get some organization. We have donations when people come down. We have a Google Doc where people can go in and donate goods. We get the hanging shelves and the sheet racks behind the door. Those little chests of drawers, they pack down nicely. They're kind of the cloth drawers, and they're not very expensive, and it's easy to manage. But we try to get stuff off the ground. But yeah, here's the group we had. It was a group of families, and he chose Kawasaki green. That's what he wanted. And what they want is what they get. And it's
I think
interesting.
it looks good.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun color. Everyone at first were like, really? And then by the end, they were like really proud of this greenhouse.
No HOA to tell them what color they have to paint their house.
And we even
Well,
put
I
in
like that you even got the lights in the eaves, and then you got the spotlights and going on there. Look
And
at
did you
that.
have like
I
little
did that 'cause they
fairy
had a
lights
chicken
in the
coop.
bedroom?
Yeah, some girls brought some fairy lights. We hung up for the little boy. He was excited.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I put lighting in the soffit now. I've kind of done some add-ons. I even put in an outlet up for Christmas lights, and if it's closer to the holidays, we put lights up and little things that make it fun, little luxuries. We buy furniture, we buy couches and futons and brand new beds, brand new mattresses. It's just the vile things they sleep on, and you'll be carrying them out and rats are jumping out of them. It's disgusting. Or they're wet and moldy. So that's the one thing standard issue is you can kind of see our design there for kitchen and pantry and cabinets. We bring them in, food storage and what have you, but always new beds and always new bedding and new pillows, something they've never had.
All the new mattresses just got to be phenomenal.
Oh yeah, they love it. They want to keep the plastic on there, but we've learned we have to take it off because it's just not good for you to sweat like that. But they don't want it off. Like, we want to keep it.
And we don't want to stain on it. No, we don't.
It's funny. But they were just over the top excited, and I've been back to visit them since, and their house is immaculate. You couldn't find a speck of dust on that ground. They take such good care of it. And you see them, and there's just such a humility and tears of joy. And when you embrace one another, you go right back to those feelings. And it's always the feelings that people talk about. And I think that's what God does. He makes us feel good. It's not the money. It's not the car. Those fleeting moments, happiness are fun, but the joy comes from this kind of stuff.
So this is a project you just did.
Yeah. This is the Paguero family. We just finished this up about a week and a half ago.
So this is the project, inside the house, completed project.
Yep. Yeah, so that's where they were living. That green in the background is a mother-in-law's home, probably about 500 square feet, and that little cement room and that yellowish orangish to the left of it, you can see the dirt laying up against a wall coming up about 2.5 feet, and so just the leaching soil getting in that wall. His son was really in a bad way with his asthma, and we just knew we had to help him. We knew instantly. We were really guided to this family. And so then we had to tear things down. You can see that kind of a landslide problem again. If you zoom up to that top left, that's a sidewalk and part of the road that's hanging. And so we brought in a backhoe, and and put in a tire retaining wall and backfilled it so that we wouldn't have a slide into the new home we put in. Yeah, here's a little video. I had a friend down there with a drone. That's an not irrigation, it's a runoff canal. Everything's very hilly, and it used to just be dirt. But you can see we're kind of staged there, painting the T111 down there on the road, and we're using the driveway. We got stuff stacked all over the place, trying to keep organized as we can. And you'll see we get up into this structure. We're literally 2 feet from one side, 7 inches from the other, and 3 from the other. We're just puzzled in to make it work.
Zoom back in here, then I'll just pause it here. And you can let you explain it. So here you got the road up here at the back.
Yeah.
Then you got your tire. So explain this tire wall that you guys built.
Yeah, down there you can do, typical retention like you do here with pavers, or even pouring. As you know, in concrete, we can, put a foundation wall. A little bit more tricky, a little slower for dry and backfilling, where this is something they can do on their own. And labor is easily found and affordable, and there's not a lack of supply of tires. There's been projects where we'll literally take a group of kids in the truck and go to the hillside, to the landfill, and just, with everyone else that's doing it, when in Rome, and the kids are just having a blast, digging through the garbage and I found one, and 40 tires later, and they're stoked to go put a wall together. It's funny.
So you're mixing concrete and rubber tires.
Yeah, that was done ahead of time. I had a group that we have help us down there and paid them to do that for me, just so that we wouldn't. It just wasn't going to work to have it. As you can see, it's so tight.
Yeah.
We had to have it done.
And this red house is a neighbor?
That's just a neighbor. Yeah, we're right next to him.
So you're
How
not
do they feel
dealing
about you
with a
being
lot
there?
of space
Totally
here.
fine.
You're not dealing with a lot of space at all.
No. So you can see that main area, and you can see an annex room to the right. The main area is 20 by 26, and that's usually what we build. And then I added a 10 by 11 room to the side, just because I have a daughter that has
I'm going to give that some
special needs.
perspective. Most of our living rooms and kitchens are bigger than a 20 by 26.
Oh, yeah.
And you're building an entire house that's 20 by 26.
Yep. Yeah, and they think it's a mansion. Yeah, it's pretty fun. But yeah, it's standard stick construction with 2 pane glass. But yeah, everyone's kind of putting things together. This is kind of the tail end of day one. And that road up there, you see, if you were to go to the right down about 75, 80 yards is where that brown suspended house is. We do a lot of work in this area. Here's kind of the latter part of the week. You can see the beds and the pantries coming together, getting it all painted in advance to then build. As you kind of pan over to the right, you're going to see the house is a little bit more
That canal, is
established.
that sewer? Or what?
You're going to get some of that in there for sure. It was pretty smelly, but it's mainly to capture the water to not wash out too much. Otherwise, the erosion's horrendous. Yeah. But yeah, we're kind of well, I guess this is actually day 2. We're starting to partition the interior. It was day 2. We didn't even have the bathroom partition.
What are they digging in the background there?
They're digging in a staircase with tires. So they can get up there. Yeah, and then, the guy that was doing it, he's kind of type A, a good buddy of mine. He's like, dude, I got to get some fence. So I ordered in some fence and posts. They put a new fence in too.
So do they access the home from up there or from down?
Both, yeah. Hopefully I'm kind of sharing what you're hoping.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Got that young man that's saying thank you. He has pretty severe autism, and their older daughter too. There's Lupita hugging on my wife, and it's a pretty special moment these nights. Yeah, if a person hasn't ever felt God before, it's impossible not to in these moments. Because there's one thing going on here, and it's love, and it's a language that everyone understands.
Look at that kitchen table on the couch.
Yeah, we found some furniture. We found a little sectional. We went over the top. We even embellished with things, and all the moms are like, we want to do more. And Myrna,
I just love seeing the joy in him.
yeah, he's stimming. He's got all of his little things he does to regulate. When he went into his own bedroom, he was so ecstatic. We had insane amount of donations. We probably had 15, 20 pairs of shoes for each of them, and lots of clothes. Some new, some gently used. But like I say, brand new beds. And she was looking at a picture, an artistic picture of Christ on the wall. And
That's the
Pretty
husband,
tender.
right?
Yeah, that's Rodrigo, a man that just had been praying to God for a miracle. He's like, my son is sick, and Lord, I need you. And we met him 3 days later, and a few months later, he's got a home.
Can't say miracles don't happen, right?
No.
If they're praying for it and you're praying for it, it just brings you together.
Yeah,
He just matches it up.
he does. He makes a match. Some people have got something to give and some need, and he puts you together.
So walk us through this video.
This was a project for Estella, actually. And, this is a kind of a little bit of a vignette of all 3 days. We built this home in 3 days.
Yeah, this is one we just went over, the 3 houses in a row.
Yes, correct. This was the first one, and you got kids building and sanding and filling holes. The taco stand, I mean, you can't beat it.
Oh,
Their tacos
that
are
looks
insane.
amazing.
But yeah, here we are, moms and children. Never used a measuring tape and didn't know what those little red markers were. And by the end of the week, they know what's going on. Mixing up cement on the ground, that's always fun.
Try not to get dirt in it.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that. Yeah, it's not that. I mean, you can take a 16 penny nail and shoot those walls right into the ground just to hold the glue. Yeah, the concrete's not great. But everyone's having a great time, and you can't drag the kids off the project site. You can't get them to make their bed at home. And I'm not leaving, Dad, till this is finished. Then we have a culture night at one of the churches down there, and they perform, and I host and have a meal for everybody. This is inside our building, where we're having a quick little kickoff in the morning, and usually a little bit of a devotional, and then get assignments for the day. Here's the interior work going on, and these people, we use a sheetrock lift from time to time, but they're doing tire retaining walls. You name it, it's going on, and these kids just all learn on the fly, and like you say, the confidence building is incredible. Here's a 7-year-old up there with the flamethrower melting some roll-on roofing. I always take the youngest one up there. They think that's pretty awesome. I mean, who doesn't want to use a flamethrower? Come on, little pyro. But here's my daughter right there. She's the sheetrock manager, and then my other daughter in the background right there, she's the electrician. And they all kind of take a part. And here's when we revealed to them, we bought them a futon. It was a little bit of a different layout than the ones you saw before with Christian. It's just usually the same, but there's slight variation based on the land. And I have a buddy that's an architect and helps me draw up some real basic plans.
So there's the one separate bedroom.
Yeah, and this one only was a 2-bedroom. She had the 3 boys. We made a bunk and a twin in one room, and then mom and dad in the other. And these parents have never had privacy before. And, I always wonder, how does that work? That's got to be scarring for your poor children. And so it's always a wonderful thing to let them know, you got some privacy over here. And you always get that little grin, which makes me laugh. They're human, They just want what's best for their families. And like I said, this, the one you saw before, Paguero, the one we did last week, just the heartfelt thank yous. He's pretty educated and speaks decent English, but he really sees these things for what they are and wants it for his children. But talk about a connection to God answering prayer for him, for us, and for the group we took down. And we all left. And, over the last week and a half, I've bumped into some of these families we've taken that are in my neighborhood and some that I've known from the gym. And you just look at each other and you just know, there's a bond forever. And, Christ brings us together. The whole analogy of the body of Christ, and the arm doesn't function without the shoulder, the wrist without the hand. And we bring these things to life in the mornings and talk scriptures, we talk principles, and we try to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to life for these participants so that they can connect with their maker. And that's the most important part. It's the messaging of what we're doing and the miracles that are ensuing from those conversations to tie it all together. And these kids have light bulbs that turn on, and that changes the course and the trajectory of their life when they come home. And I pray that they continue on, and they're a little nicer, a little more kind, a little more empathetic and compassionate to those that suffer. And I've watched it, and I've seen, burly studs that are, football stars that are a little nicer to that person's got Down syndrome, or, the boy that's being bullied.
Yeah, you're planting seeds that'll last them the rest of their lives.
Yeah. I mean, they'll be idiots again, like my kids initially. They last for 2 weeks. It's somewhere in there. They're putting it together, but, it gets repeated, and then it sticks. I think we all need that.
Well, like I said, it gets them out of their shells, and then when they come back home, they're not so judgmental anymore.
Right.
They see that people that are less circumstances there, they have a little more understanding. Obviously, the poor up here are not near what the poor down there are, but they'll still have a little bit more gratitude and a little more appreciation, compassion, like you were saying, for those that are a little less fortunate, even within their own school, within their own community, and
Yeah.
bite their tongue a little bit or step out and actually help somebody a little bit. Find somebody who's a little more downtrodden. Maybe someone at school is getting a little bullied, and all of a sudden they're like, no, that's not going to happen. That's not right. I'm going to stand up for these people.
Right.
And it comes from just nailing a few nails and putting up a few 2x4s. Yeah. All of a sudden at school, a couple weeks later, they're standing up to
Right.
a bully or something like that.
It's true.
It affects everything that they think about, because just minds change, the thought process change, everything changes.
Yeah.
I think it helps you look at your trials differently too.
Yeah.
That maybe not so hard or easier to overcome compared to
Right.
what others are dealing with.
For sure.
And not only that, but teenagers, they think high school's everything. Like that,
Oh,
their
yeah.
little drama that goes on in high school, and it's just the end of the world if someone breaks up with me or something like that. And all of a sudden, that's not as important anymore. It's not as
Right.
dramatic. It's life and reality hits home a little bit more, and they're not so self-involved that those things are so dramatic anymore.
Right. I had an experience on Estella's project, just reminded me of that, of one of these youth. It was a young girl, not too young. I think she was 16 at the time. And, typical 16-year-old giving mom and dad a little bit of grief. And, they're relatively affluent, but they're great parents and provide good opportunities for their kids. And anyone that's willing to do something like this are typically a pretty good person. But this girl had a little bit of an attitude and was a little bit nervous. And anyway, on the job site, started to kind of become more malleable, and we had a little activity one of the evenings at the church, and it was a culture night. They danced and performed and cooked for us, and we hosted the big party. But Estella, I think that first day, this girl had told her, hey, at the party, said, I love your little sweater. It was like this green, funky sweater that she had over her shirt. And then, of course, like clockwork, the next morning, there's Viviana, and she's got her nicest little sweater wrapped up with a little bow on it. And she comes out, and I'm so chaotic myself. I'm managing this crazy project, but it caught my eye, and I just froze for a minute, and I watched as Viviana pulled her to the side and presented her best to this girl, Addie, and I just watched them embrace and love, and then I saw Addie walk over to her parents, and they just sobbed together, and just said, Mom, I don't think I've felt this good in my life ever before, and all my worries and all the things that stressed me out, they're just gone. So happy. I haven't felt this happy before. And they had their little moment, and they kind of called me over, and then we all had a moment together just talking about it. And it was just one of those lasting memories of, this is what we're supposed to feel like. This is joy. And we can repeat this other places. It's not just here. And I've had kids that have, severe anxiety or depression that are there that don't even know how to handle the stimuli. And, I had one girl that tell her mom on, day 2 in the morning, Mom, is this what it feels like to feel normal? Mom, I don't feel anxious at all. I'm not sad. I feel so good. And then you got a mom that's in tears that their daughter's feeling what they're supposed to feel like. And it's one reason. There's one thing. It's the conqueror of all things, and it's the atonement of our great Lord and Savior. And it just brings it to life that he did all of that so that we can feel good and we can feel what we are intended to feel. And, you have those moments, and once again, the house could burn to the ground. And if we all walked away and that's all that happened, it would be worth every hour I spend, which is a lot to get these things prepared. And honestly, it's about building people and recognizing our divine potential and how spectacular we really are. And as divine beings that we can conquer and accomplish anything with our Maker. And it just keeps me going. And it's just
let's give our audience kind of a reality check too. So tell us, how many hours does it take per project, and what is your legitimate budget so people can understand what the donations need to be at?
Well, the way I've been doing this is I do a per head charge, and it's group funded. I do get some donations outside of that to help augment for maybe some additional niceties like a television or a couch, things they don't have to have, but it's a few $100s. I've spent more money at dinner with my family. And so we try to do a little extra like that, but I at this point, I'm usually around $700 a head. I try to bring in...
What the project itself, the house itself, what are you spending roughly per house?
So, for example, the Paguero house, if you include all of everything I did...
all in.
Maybe $26,000 for that entire project, for all the prep and everything. I try to keep my budgeting. I mean, the peso to dollar, there's a million things that go into this, and the prep sometimes different. You get into the land and like, oh my gosh, like that cement structure. I'm thinking $3,000-4,000 more than normal to put that in there, and it ended up being $13,800 to get that cement structure in, and that project was over $30,000, and that was 2017. That project would cost me $40,000 today, and the manna, it just falls. The Lord's like, just keep going. Don't worry about it.
You're looking 25 to 40 grand per project.
Ish, yeah.
Per project,
Yeah.
and then the hours that you put into it.
Well,
I'm not talking about the man hours, but the prep hours. How many hours are you putting into it?
Well, it just depends. I'm way better at it now, and I'm to the point where I can reuse some of my plans and so forth, but there's always some nuances. But I'm guessing I put in 150 hours of time.
A year?
Each project.
Each project?
Yeah, probably about 2.5 weeks of time. Maybe more, maybe 3 weeks. Sometimes more. It's hard to know.
When
I'm
we're
guessing
talking to the audience
hours.
here, and everybody's out there, it's like, so how can I participate? How can I donate?
Yeah. Well,
you're looking for $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 a year because you're doing a project a year, right? So
I'm doing actually 2, sometimes 3.
2 or 3 projects a year.
Sometimes.
So you're looking for
So normally
$100,000 a year. Is that what the budget is?
Yeah. Well, like I say, they're group funded. So when I build a group, there's a per head charge that covers majority of the expense. When we do extras, or if there's a caveat up front, like, ooh, the road's hanging and we got to suspend this, and it's going to cost us a couple $1,000s to hire and get the materials to do it. I have some businesses.
I know you're funding it through per head charges, but there's going to be a lot of people who are not necessarily going to be going down.
No, I understand. So as far as
open up the pocketbook and donate.
Yeah, so I have businesses and others that do contribute. So we have a slush fund, if you will, to be able to do extras and more things. And when I have overages, or if I have a youth group that's coming and I don't want to make it too unaffordable, like the youth groups are a little more expensive. You got vans, you got insurance, and then you're $1,200 a head. And some kids just don't have it. And so we've got people that'll sponsor them and pay for half or pay for all, depending upon kind of how we feel. And you want to have skin in the game, right? But there's businesses that have contributed to help with things like this project we're going to be doing in August. I've got one coming up here in a month and a half. And we're going to be building a 3-bedroom again, like you saw, that we did for the Paguero family. And it's 14 people living in a 1,200 square foot 2-story. I mean, I had to stop somewhere, but that, if I showed you that, you'd die, how horrible the conditions are. Their bathroom is vile. And there's 14 of them. And I asked them, what happens when y'all have the flu? We just have to go outside. And it's, mom and a dad, 4 children, 3 married. They have no money. They have to be together. And so we're taking the one daughter that's single. She's a single mom with 3 kids, 1 autistic, building her a 3-bedroom on the family estate. They got a pig farm in the back. We're going to renovate the other house for the rest of the 10, add a brand new bathroom, renovate the one that's there, sheetrock the whole main floor, rewire the whole place because it's a rat's nest, fire waiting to happen. And I've got tons of dads coming with their sons, and several of them are contractors. So we're going to bust that out, and it's going to probably be, I'm guessing we're going to spend $35,000 on that one between the 2 projects that will do all of it in 4 days. And part of the expedited process is part of the need to see the miracle. Not that, because you can't go down there, you could work for 2 weeks if you wanted, but the 4 days is a miracle in and of itself to see that the Lord can fill the gap. But yeah, so as far as money is concerned, it's a relative thing. The group funding is the majority of where it comes from, but I've had a lot of people contribute more. And I do have plans.
Well, once this gets out, trust me, we've got listeners, and they're all going to be saying, okay, how do we donate?
My real goal here in the next bit, I'm currently pretty busy for the next handful of years. I'm a bishop in my local congregation, which is consuming a lot of my time. But when I'm retiring here in the next few years, I'm going to procure some land and build my own dormitory. We have a little bit of a conflict of space where, we want to be there similar timings through the summer. So we have to kind of juggle that a bit. I want to have my own building in a little bit different geographic so we can penetrate other areas. Because you don't want to drive too long every morning to go somewhere. I try to keep it like a 30-minute radius so you're not burning travel time. Plus, you want to be, closer to some proximity for some local materials and things because it's tricky. I've been on jobs where, you need a 2x6x12, and you got to drive 30 minutes and back with traffic, and an hour and 20 later, and you've lost 4 man days of work because they need me. Stuff like that's tricky. So we want to build a dormitory. I'm going to probably need about 80 grand for the land, and we're working towards putting that together, and probably another 150 to 200,000 to get our building started. So for about $250,000, maybe a little less, 220,000, we'll get a building together to be able to do a little more good and to add more trips. And then from that, just having kind of a scholarship fund for getting people that can't afford to be there, that need to. Like this last trip we took, I've taken single moms down there before that are in a bad way and want to provide for their kids' experiences. And, there's men in the groups and they just rally and we love on each other, but it's tough for them. They're struggling to make ends meet. I'd love to have a fund to say, look, we want you there, and don't let money get in your way. And, get yourself down to San Diego, get yourself to the border. We'll get you into the country and take care of everything else. So those are the kinds of things I'm aspiring toward. But I think the dormitory piece, generating the revenue, a couple 100,000, $250,000 shouldn't be too hard. I've got, people that have talked to me about that, but we're going to procure land and do that. And so I can get a little more good. And when I'm retired, I'm planning on doing at least 6 projects myself a year, and then get some others involved.
That's pretty ambitious to do 6 projects a year. Yeah. That's really ambitious.
Once every other month is my plan. And as far as prep, I say 100 to 150 hours if you take every little step of the way. And then there's some projects like the one coming in August. I'm building an exact replica of the 3-bedroom we did. It's on different land, and so I've got a few things I have to change. The roof line's a little different. So you got to architect that a little different. But it's probably at the minimum 100 hours to prepare for each project. And then I have a little aftermath, and I hate the accounting. I would love to have someone on the board that wants to take on all that. It's a pain. It's the worst part of the job, dealing with the books. But I've got a system that works pretty good, and I put a lot in. I put a lot of time in, but I think you can maybe feel I'm pretty passionate about this.
Yeah.
I love it, and it's worth it. I'd put 300 hours in if I had to. And I'm telling you, when I'm down there, I run like a madman. I don't know if anyone could outwork, how I feel, but the Lord buoys me up, man. I feel 18, and I can get 4 hours of sleep, and I can go. My mind is clear. I'm sharp. I'm working with something. I hear someone, and I've got 7 things going on at the same time, and it's just crazy how He enlightens my capacity. And then, of course, you cross the border and pass out. We go to Mission Bay and have that contrast moment. The whole group watch the sunset. You go from abject poverty to wretched excess. And it's a good time to have a little chat. And we all sit there and talk, go to dinner together, and I just crash. And, but man, the burn. I have gotten to know my Savior in ways that there's no other way I could have. And I feel like there's nothing that I can't do without Him, with Him in my life. There's nothing I can't do. I'm not a contractor. I have no business in building houses in Mexico. It's ridiculous. What am I doing that for? And then seriously, I'm going to take moms and kids, a mature 8-year-old and up, that have never held a hammer. I've had groups before where they've had 0 skills, and a house goes up in 4 days. They get a 5-minute lesson on framing, and the next thing you know, they're 2 nail guns in their hands going crazy. And that mom that was terrified, the next morning she's teaching the next mom how to do it. And it's so empowering. It is so amazing to see people feel confidence. I've had a single mom, one that came down with her daughters. They went home, and she wanted to put a room in her basement, and those daughters of hers and her hung the sheetrock, did the wiring, hung a door. And once again, you'd have thought they just built the Taj Mahal. And, the power that comes from that. Now she's since been remarried, and I've taken her down with her new husband, and he's relatively affluent, and some of their kids, and just the connection and just what it does for us as people to be together in Christ and doing His work and being on His errand is what this life's about. It's what brings us together. It's why we're sitting here. The conversations that happened in the orthodontist office. I hate these braces. But nonetheless, it's amazing. Even some of the people that work in that office, one in particular, it's amazing.
With the laws changing, are you still able to get everybody through their just simple IDs, or are you having to passport everybody now?
No, the interesting thing, the law states passports to re-enter the U.S., but if you have a valid birth certificate and a picture ID, you're fine. That could change at any time. But getting into the country, todos, bienvenidos, everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. But there's a checkpoint. If there's an Amber Alert or something, once in a while you'll get stopped on the way in, but it's pretty rare. But coming home is a drag. It's long. Sometimes we've had waits for 4.5 hours in line. But part of it's the experience. I like at least a couple hours in the line because you can get out and walk around and shop and get your churros and, you know, the Nieves, the Coco Pina ice cream. You got to have it. It's just, there's something addictive in there. I don't know what it is, but I have to have it every time. And their churros are amazing. But just the kids get an opportunity to like really embrace it.
You're not having any problems going across the border and coming back?
No, coming home's not a problem ever. We've never had issues. My daughter once, we forgot her birth certificate. I don't know how it got lost, but she's really darker complected, Mikkel. And I mean, I guess you could pass her for Hispanic. So they gave us a little grief at the border, and they made her open up her social media apps and show her, and that she got through by using Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect.
There you go.
Isn't that hilarious?
That's hilarious.
It's funny, but it's a little more tricky now. I mean, there's a lot of people that try to make runs at the border. We had all those caravans coming up, and, you know, we had that season right before this election where I have videos I could show you of people climbing the wall, breaking through, and it used to be no man's land between the two borders, and there was signs, in here you're shot dead. And they were just climbing over, running in like nobody's business. It was unbelievable. And it's gone. That's gone now. It's really cleaned up.
Yeah, a lot more under control now.
And the ironic thing about all of that is the people the most disgruntled about this immigration issue are the naturalized Mexicans. They're the ones that are most irritated because they did it the right way.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, everyone's saying how inhumane and how awful and how this and how that. But just the absorption and all the conversations I've had with people that are affluent in Mexico, they have similar feelings as to maybe the conservative Americans around this policy issue. But I've learned a lot about that too, just about, you know, the politics between the two countries. And Mirna that I work with down there, she's heavily engaged in politics in Mexico. She's super smart. They have a lot of really neat things. But this woman president they have now and the one prior, they've really done a lot of cleanup. There's heavy negotiations with the cartel, and they're working together initially and trying to make effective change. And sometimes it goes well and other times not. But I've got some real interesting stories about what they have done. But yeah, all of this has been just a godsend for me and my family. There's a picture of, I don't know if you can see, I think it was in the picture of the consolidated photos of my family now. It's the most current one we have. So yeah, this is my family, my son Spencer on the far left and his wife Ellie. And we got Nick and Ava right next to them, and Mikkel far right, and her husband Jake. Jake and Nick were friends all through school. He's awesome. We love him. And then I got Aubrey next to me, and my beautiful wife Andrea that supports me. And
So
she's my rock.
Daughter
She's
over
amazing.
here that
Which one?
is this your daughter over here?
Yeah, she's my daughter.
She's the one you were talking about, the little darker skin.
Yeah,
Had to use
yeah. She's got the Armenian blood.
got the
had to use
She's
the
very-
social media to get through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's funny.
I
But
could see that happening. I could totally see that happening. You got a bunch of blonde hair, then all of a sudden you got the brown haired girl.
well, this is all 9 of us. It's just a wonderful thing. I love my family, and I'm so proud of them for the kind of people they've become. And, you know, they love God, and they know what he means and what he can do. And like you say, they're successful because of that. And it's by no means really anything that I've done. It's what God has done for us. And you know, he's behind it all.
Well, this has been a marvelous experience because the absolute sacrifice that I'm seeing there, but just the chain of miracles is just unfathomable, and it's going to go on without stopping, and the amount of lives it's going to affect. Because, like I said, it's going to trickle out. It's just going to keep spreading because they're going to take what they've learned and spread it, and it's going to teach. And what the audience has to realize is you don't have to go down to Mexico and build a house for somebody to get these type of miracles in your life. You just got to get out of your box and get into that service mentality. So when you're down, you're depressed, your kids are down, you're depressed, you're having problems, think outside the box. Think outside of you.
Right.
Figure out a way to just go out and serve it. It all goes
Ask
away.
God,
It
send me
dissipates.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Ask God where you should be.
Yeah,
Right.
it dissipates very, very quickly when you stop thinking about yourself. You start thinking about others.
Sure. If you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you know, you've done it unto me. And I've just learned that you do right by God and he'll do right by you. And it's not always in your own timing. Yeah, there's burdens along the way, but man, there's growth in the journey, and nothing ever, ever has come good to any of us without a little sacrifice. And that's
And
a
it's not
principle.
saying no to the opportunity because
No.
you don't even know when the opportunity is going to show up. It could be something simple, and you're not even mentally not even there in the moment, and you just might flip them and just say, no, I don't have time for that right now. But if you catch yourself and just start saying yes just to the simple little service stuff, you'll find that all of a sudden the big stuff starts happening, the miracles start happening.
Yeah.
And it's just catching yourself in the moment and just, instead of saying no,
So true.
start saying yes.
Charity conquers all.
Start saying yes.
Yeah.
Well, any last words?
I'm a better person for having known you, and I'm so grateful that you accepted the invitation to come. You know, it came from out of the blue, and
Yeah, it did.
he wasn't sure what to think.
Yeah. Well, I knew I had this obligation up here this week, and I just felt it was the right thing to do. I knew I needed to do this. And
I'm
I
so
appreciate
grateful.
it.
The spirit that we felt here, and a few Kleenexes later,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting a little more emotional as I get older. But I just learned, man, if you're ever in a bad way, just be with people of like-minded spirit, and we'll never, ever be better than the net average of the top 5 people in our life. And as I say to all the participants our final day, it's like, you know, it's important if you want good things to happen and good feelings and good things to be in your life. Be around people like you see here. But at the same time, you know, is Christ part of that social sphere? You know, is he part of your top 5? And if he isn't, he needs to be, because he is behind all of it, all the good things. And I'm just so grateful that I've got him in my life. And I have people like you and others that believe, because it's inspirational and we need it. We need to be reminded of our purpose, of our origin, and our path forward and our path home.
I testify that's true.
Amen.
Well, this is God and Country. This is one of the few videos we've done that's absolutely not political in any way, shape, or form, but we hope that everybody felt just the spirit of this and just kind of take that second look at bringing God into your life. I mean, wherever you're at in life, whatever religion you're practicing, it doesn't matter. We all understand that God's got to be in our lives, and that's what brings these principles forward and just changes things. And then, most importantly, don't be afraid to get out of your shell. Just get out of the shell and start looking at others a little more compassionately and figure out ways to serve. And then you're just going to find these little moments open up. Learn to say yes.
Have a little faith and then look for the miracle.
We appreciate everybody's attendance. We'll see everybody next week. Next week, we've got a veteran coming in from both the Afghanistan and Iraq war, and he's going to tell us some cool stories about the elections that happened on over there. So we'll see everybody next week.